6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Good afternoon, wonderful people. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. You can't get rid of me, can you? This is the first week of my new Friday 3 till 6 slot, so 5 days a week, 3 till 6. What's not to love? We're going to Qatar. We're also going to try and solve the migrant crisis, and we're revealing why GPs want to work less hard for their patients. After the 6-2 mauling of Iran, England now face a tougher test against the USA. But England remain firm favourites to get a result in Doha tonight, which would qualify them for the next round of the tournament. But for Wales, it's all but over, after falling to a 2-0 defeat to Iran in a chaotic last spell of the match. And we have our very own GB News People's Polls. 60% of you want to prioritise training British workers rather than embracing endless mass migration. This is off the back of record levels of net migration. In other news, GPs are demanding that they close their surgeries at 5 p.m. They just want a cushy 9-to-5 job, don't they? Apparently working longer hours, get this, discriminates against women who want to have families. Shocking stuff. As ever, get in touch, tvviews@gbnews.uk. Should GPs only work 9 to 5?
Good afternoon. It's just gone 3 o'clock. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The government's refusing to back down over nurses' pay demands ahead of their first national strike in over a century. Staff in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will walk out for 2 days on the 15th and 20th of December. The Royal College of Nursing accused the government of rejecting formal talks as an alternative to industrial action. But Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says what the union's asking for is simply unaffordable.
Look, I have enormous respect and gratitude to our nurses, as everyone does, for the incredible job they do. And look, I know things are difficult right now for everyone because of what's happening with inflation. And that's why our plans that we outlined last week will get a grip of inflation and bring it down. That's really important. And in the meantime, what the unions are asking for, I think, is a 19% pay rise. And I think most people watching will recognise that that's obviously unaffordable. And that's why I'm pleased that the Health Secretary is sitting down, talking to the union, and hopefully we can find a way through this.
Well, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer says the government's shirking its responsibilities.
Nurses have been driven to this by the government, and that's a badge of shame for the government. They've never taken strike action before. And for patients, this is going to be devastating news. Nurses don't want to go on strike.
The government says the bullying investigation into the Deputy Prime Minister has been expanded. Downing Street confirmed a third formal complaint has now been lodged against Dominic Raab. He denies any wrongdoing and says his behaviour and conduct is always professional. A former soldier has been convicted of killing a man more than 30 years ago at an army checkpoint in Northern Ireland. 53-year-old David Jonathan Holden was found guilty of manslaughter of Aidan McAnesby in County Tyrone in 1988. Holden admitted firing the shot that killed him, but claimed it was an accident. Paul Young is national spokesman for the Northern Ireland Veterans Movement. He says they'll appeal the verdict.
Veterans, I can say, will be deeply disappointed by this verdict. I'm saddened by it, but it's not over for David yet, because his team are, as far as I'm aware, are going to appeal the decision, and I think eventually, if necessary, go to the Supreme Court.
A woman with Down syndrome has lost a legal battle in the Court of Appeal. Heidi Crowther had challenged legislation which allows the abortion of babies with the condition up until birth. In England, Wales and Scotland, there's a 24-week limit for terminations, but that can be extended if there's substantial risk the child could be born with physical or mental abnormalities. The Foreign Secretary has announced a package of hands-on support to help Ukraine through the winter. The country is still experiencing power blackouts after Russian airstrikes hit key infrastructure. During his first official trip to Kyiv, James Cleverly pledged to send 35 more emergency vehicles, as well as a further £3 million to help rebuild the country. He says it's important the UK shows its continued support.
Ultimately, I think it's incredibly important that the UK demonstrates to the Ukrainian people, who are bearing the brunt of this brutality from Russia, that we are standing shoulder to shoulder with them through our military support, through our humanitarian support, through our economic support, but also through the visible support.
And it's not over till it's over, but the World Cup hopes of Wales hang by a thread after their last-minute defeat to Iran earlier. 2-0 the final score. Both goals conceded late in stoppage time after Wales were reduced to 10 men after their keeper was sent off with just 5 minutes remaining. That result leaves them bottom of Group B with one game to play against England. Well, former football manager Harry Redknapp told GB News Iran's win was well-deserved.
I must be truthful. I wanted Wales to win desperately. I was really cheering Wales on, but Iran were much the better team throughout the game. It wasn't just the 2 goals and the sending off. They'd hit the woodwork on a couple of occasions and really looked a very good team today, Iran. I mean, it just makes England's result look even better when we battered them the other day, you know. But, yeah, in fairness, Wales didn't play well today. They were thoroughly well beaten, and Iran deserved the win.
Harry Kane's on the mind tonight. It's England's turn against the USA, and they're chasing 3 points to secure a place in the knockout stages. Best of luck. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, it's back to Patrick.
Yes, people, it's Patrick Christys right here on GB News with you all the way through until 6 p.m. Now, there's loads to talk about today. We're going to be talking about whether or not GPs should only work a 9 to 5. Apparently, they want to shut their doors at 5 p.m. in the middle of a health crisis because, well, apparently discriminate against women. We're also going to be looking at those immigration figures as well. Is the student visa just a big immigration con? And much, much more. But, ladies and gents, there's really only one big story in town for now, isn't there? Because the Three Lions are set to take on the United States tonight in Doha. Gareth Southgate's men are at full strength after fears during the week over Captain Harry Kane after he hobbled off against Iran. We nearly had another metatarsal moment, but alas, his ankle injury is looking OK. But the good news is he's now fine, he's fine, and the Three Lions look set to start him tonight against the USA. But for Wales, sadly, it's all but over. I was listening to it on the radio earlier on, and, it was so close. Anyway, after losing 2-0 to Iran in their Group B clash earlier, which means it is do or die for Wales next Tuesday with their clash with England. What do you reckon? If the English have already qualified, do we just give it to them? Probably get banned for that. And even if they pull off a victory, they would need other results to go their way. But let's cross over now to Doha, where GB News' man in the souk, Paul Hawkins, joins us. Yes, Paul, getting progressively more and more tanned, and that shirt getting more and more unbuttoned by the day. I love it, mate. I absolutely love it. How's the atmosphere over there?
It's electric. It's electric. In fact, we're just going to talk to a couple of Welsh fans in a moment. Look over here. Look at the Argentina fans that have congregated. They're playing Mexico tomorrow. clearly that defeat to Saudi Arabia hasn't dampened their spirits, but that's for tomorrow. Let's tell you more about what happened earlier today. Wales losing 2-0 to Iran. We can speak to Arwen and Geraint, who've joined us. Guys, thanks for speaking to us. First of all, how are you feeling after that defeat?
Bit disappointed. Felt it was a close. We were still in it in the first half. They had a couple of really good chances. We weren't quite creative enough, and they got us pretty well on the counter. So hats off to Iran.
Yeah, Geraint, is that a fair assessment?
I would agree. They were by far the better team today. We've come here after 64 years not being in the World Cup. We haven't really performed. But the red wall was here, and we're glad to be part of it. And well done, Iran.
Yeah, was there anything that Rob Page, the manager, could have done differently today with the way you set them up?
He did do a tactical switch in the second half. Perhaps he could have done that a bit earlier. Bring some, more energetic, youthful, more creative players. They came on a bit too late, but no, hats off to Iran. They counted well, and they, I suppose, performed well when we changed formations. So
they looked a little higher energy. Do you think the heat also? I know that these stadiums are air conditioned, but do you think the heat also possibly played a factor?
They're used to playing in warmer climates than we are, but we don't want to make any excuses. They were by far the better team today, and we have to congratulate them.
Yeah,
we're disappointed, obviously. We've come a long way in a short time, but
you're not out though. You're not technically out.
No, exactly. We beat the English.
But even if you beat the English, and you might do, you still need. I think a draw tonight would be the best result for you.
Yeah.
So you need the USA to help you, but not to be too helpful, and then you need to beat the English. Can you beat England though?
On our day, why not? We were close in the Euros. We were 1-0 up for a long period, and then 2 goals right at the end. So why not? But
the way we're playing at the moment, I think you've got to make England favourites. But we're here. We've got an opportunity. We know the English players.
Yeah. So you never know what's going to happen.
You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Football's a funny old game.
It certainly is. Yeah. As Japan and Germany, listen, guys, thanks for speaking to us.
No problem.
Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. So that's how it looks from the Welsh perspective. Let's get the English perspective now. Not long to go until they play the USA. Local time, 10 o'clock here in Doha. That's when they play. 7 o'clock your time. This is what some England fans have been telling us earlier.
Yeah, more of a challenge, but I think Gareth's got the boys in the right mindset. They've had 4 or 5 days to reset. There won't be complacency. They play week in, week out in the Prem. They know the score. They just got to keep going day after day. And I'm expecting a big result, 5-0 tonight, surely.
Yeah. Coming into this, watching the Wales game with the USA, nothing special to be honest. They got a couple of key players. Pulisic, one, hasn't been firing on all cylinders for Chelsea the last couple of seasons, if I'm honest. So I'm not really worried coming into this. I think we're going to be solid.
Easy.
Wow, you're the
We're
first.
USA. We're USA. We're USA. USA. England played. Who they play? Iran.
Yeah.
They won today, but we're USA.
Yeah.
We're USA. Again, I'm confident. I'm a proud American. USA all the way.
Yeah. There you go. So that's how the Americans are feeling, and the English. It should be an interesting game, much higher paced, and also late at night. So it should make for a more entertaining spectacle than the last England game. Although 6 goals was pretty good to watch. Let's just get a quick Iranian perspective. We've just been joined by you guys. How are you feeling?
Very good. Today's match is very fantastic, and we win this match. And the next match with America, we will win this match too.
What song? We can't give us a song.
Last match we lose because our team
they had things on their mind.
Yes.
Yeah. What's going on in Iran? Yeah.
Problems in Iran and.
So what happened? Do they still have things on their mind, or?
Today's better feeling, better mind, and focus on the football. And this is the result. We win this match. And the next match will be better. I promise.
Yeah. Okay. Listen, guys. Thanks for speaking to us. Really appreciate it. Thanks. Go and enjoy your win. There you go. So you get the Iranian, the Welsh, the American, and the English perspective. It's all going off in the souk here tonight, and tomorrow Argentina will try and redeem themselves.
Yeah, indeed, Paul. I must say you're doing stellar stuff for us over there. But I've got to ask, what's your prediction for tonight's match, England-USA?
Oh, do you know what? If you'd asked me at the start of the tournament, I'd have gone for an England win. But given how Argentina were beaten by the Saudis, given how the Germans were beaten by the Japanese, do you know what? I'm gonna put myself out there. I'm an optimistic England fan now. The years of hurt are over. I'm going to go for a 3-1 win to England tonight.
Oh, I thought you were going to back the Americans then for a second, Paul. You had me worried. Paul, thank you very much. Good stuff. And I'll throw it over to you again soon. Paul Hawkins, what a life. What a life, eh? Out there in the souk. Anyway, right, OK. Well, the anticipation of this huge Three Lions match is building. Let's cross over now to Sherborne in Elmet, where GB News reporter Anna Riley is, yes, in a pub with the England fans. Good stuff, Anna. I imagine the party started a while ago there.
Good afternoon, Patrick. Yeah, I think a fair few people clocked off work early this afternoon to get to the pub ahead of the match. I'm joined by the landlady of the Oddfellows Arms in Sherborne, where we are now, Maggie. Maggie, how are you feeling?
Yeah, excited. It's going to be a busy night. So, yeah, I think I'll be changing into my flat shoes very soon. Yeah, they're all coming in from work, so it will be a busy night, yeah.
Definitely. And what's it like this time round? Because there was the Euros last year, but there was all those distancing rules in place for COVID, wasn't there?
Yeah, so you had 6 to a table, there was nobody stood up. So it was really, really limited to, you know, the extent of excitement you could gather up with it. And it's going to be totally different this time, hopefully, because it's coming home.
Exactly. You think so? You've got a lot of faith in the England team. Then Monday they did really well. What are your predictions for this evening?
Well, I have said previously today that I think it will be 4-2. But with the way the goals have been going in, who knows? Who knows? But yeah, 4-2 to England, obviously.
Definitely, and you know, you'll have to be putting your flat shoes on, like you say, because it's going on till December the 18th, isn't it, if they do get into the final?
Yeah, I think I'll be in slippers if they do get to the final. I'll be permanently in slippers. But yeah, it should be really, really good atmosphere and great for the business as well.
And what's it like with this time of year? Because we've got Christmas decorations and we've got England flags up.
Yeah, it's messing with my head, this. I just don't want both up at the same time. So it is a strange feeling. You've got all your World Cup gear up and then you've got, yeah, Christmas decorations twinkling in the background. So, yeah.
Thanks so much, Maggie. So the message here, Patrick, is that it's coming home.
Yes, absolutely, yes. Fantastic. Thank you very much, Anna. Anna Riley there, GB News' Yorkshire and Humber reporter. It'll get going there soon. Right, we heard from some Wales fans over in Qatar with Paul just moments ago. The fans were also out in their numbers to watch the game in Cardiff City Centre earlier, and GB News' reporter Ellie Costello has been getting reaction to the result.
Well, some very disappointed, very sad Red Dragons behind me. A very sad atmosphere now in this pub in the centre of Cardiff. But it started with so much joy and excitement and anticipation. But as you can tell, the atmosphere down there is now very black. Wales 0, Iran 2. It was the shock result that nobody here was expecting. It went through to the 98th minute before there was a goal from Iran, and then just as the Welsh fans down here were starting to accept that, a second goal from Iran went in, and honestly they had their head in their hands. They couldn't quite believe what had happened. Well, I spoke to fans directly after the match and I asked them how they were feeling.
I'm absolutely gutted. I come out today hoping Wales going to win, but they got smashed by Iran. We thought we were going to win 3-0 today, and also we got absolutely battered. It was embarrassing.
Win, lose or draw, I'll always be here to support Wales. Simple as that. Me as a Welshman, it's amazing how we've even got to this point. I want more of this now. I think the whole country wants. Now we've had a little taster. We can carry on from this. We can build. We can go further now.
Well, what strikes you so much about listening to those fans is just how grateful they are to see their national team playing on the world stage. So many of them are here for the history. They want to see Wales in a World Cup, and they're just delighted to be there in the first place, the first time in 64 years. And no matter the way you look at it, this match has been historic. The captain, Gareth Bale, is now the most capped Welsh player of all time. And if there had been a win today, it would have been the first win at a World Cup in 64 years. But that was not to be. It was Iran 2, Wales 0. But for Iran being a country in so much turmoil, many people around the world will be thinking they truly deserved this win. And many in England will be hoping that they fare just as well tonight.
Yes, wonderful stuff. I think it's fair to say a couple of those Welsh lads won't remember that they lost today. I didn't realise that John Lennon was Welsh. But thank you very much, Ellie Costello there, from a proper party taking place in Wales. Hopefully we can match that here at some point. Anyway, come on, Yorkshire, let's have it. Right, now, something I know which is concerning a lot of you at home, and there's a bit of a shift in tone here, people, OK? Very much a shift in tone. It's the prospect of a nurses' strike. So we're going to be talking about this throughout today's programme. They want a whopping great big pay rise of around 17%. I think we were all hoping, weren't we, that people would get behind or around the negotiating table. This nurses' strike wouldn't take place, but they've announced 2 dates, and those dates, as I understand it, are the 15th and the 20th of December. Still open for negotiation, but there's a lot of wiggle room to be had there, isn't there, considering they do want a whopping great big pay rise. How do you feel about that at home? gbviews@gbnews.uk. I want to know whether or not you support the nurses' strike. Just bearing in mind, it comes on a day, something we're also going to be talking about later. I'm very passionate about this. GPs, apparently, want to just be 9 to 5. The GP surgeons want to be 9 to 5. An average salary of around £112,000 a year. Do you know the reason why they want to be 9 to 5? Apparently it's discriminatory against women with families who are GPs if they are made to work later. What do you make of that? Aren't we in the middle of a health crisis? gbviews@gbnews.uk. But in the last few hours, the Prime Minister and the leader of the Labour Party, Sir Keir Starmer, have spoken on the nurses' strike issue. Let's just have a little look and a listen to what they had to say.
Look, I have enormous respect and gratitude to our nurses, as everyone does, for the incredible job they do. And look, I know things are difficult right now for everyone because of what's happening with inflation. And that's why our plans that we outlined last week will get a grip of inflation and bring it down. That's really important. And in the meantime, what the unions are asking for, I think, is a 19% pay rise, and I think most people watching will recognise that that's obviously unaffordable, and that's why I'm pleased that the Health Secretary is sitting down, talking to the union, and hopefully we can find a way through this.
The nurses have been driven to this by the government, and that's a badge of shame for the government. They've never taken strike action before, and for patients this is going to be devastating news. Nurses don't want to go on strike. And now it seems the Health Secretary is not even prepared to get around the table to continue negotiations to avoid the strike. And frankly, if the government is that tired of governing, then they should get out the way and allow a different government to come in and deal with the underlying questions like the lack of staffing. We want to train up 15,000 new staff to come in. Cavalry is coming under a Labour government. We wouldn't sit on our hands as this government is doing.
Well, there we go. Although, crucially, won't really say whether or not he supports the strike on anything, by the way, which, considering we're staring down the barrel of a general strike, it might be quite nice to know. Playing into the hands, some would say, people who think the Labour Party are in the pockets of the unions. But we've done your football at the top, OK? We've had a bit of a laugh. We've been to Doha, we've been to Wales, we've been to Yorkshire. But now we're going to get stuck right into the news, OK? Because when we come back, it's the GB News' People poll. We asked you all sorts of stuff. Immigration, Brexit, and the England team taking the knee. I want to hear from you. gbviews@gbnews.uk is that email address. 2 big ones for you today. Do you support the nurses' strike? And on top of that as well, do you think that GP should just be 9 to 5? I'll add a third one in there as well. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Do you think that student visas are just a big immigration con? But before all of that, let's have a look at the weather.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Still some showers around today, but for the vast majority, it is a fine day. A break in between rain spells and with plenty of sunshine as well. Low pressure is still with us. We've still got this westerly breeze, but weather fronts have moved out of the way, and through the rest of Friday, this bump in isobars, that means a ridge of high pressure, will come along from the west. Ahead of that, a few showers for northern and northwest Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest. Those showers fewer and further between by the end of the afternoon. A better chance of some sunshine in between the showers. And for much of central and eastern UK, it's dry through the day with blue skies. 13 Celsius in the south, 11 in the north. Still a fairly brisk breeze, but not as windy as it has been at times through the week. Into the evening, with clear spells and winds falling light for a time, temperatures will drop away, especially across central and eastern parts of the country. But further west, the cloud builds during the early hours, the wind picks up. So it's a mild start in the west, 12, 13 Celsius first thing for some exposed western coasts. In the east, meanwhile, 3 or 4 degrees, with a bright start here, despite that chill. Into the late morning, it looks like spells of rain will push through Northern Ireland into Scotland, parts of Wales and the far southwest. The rain becoming heavier and more persistent through the afternoon, accompanied by a strong wind, gales around exposed coasts. But it's a mild direction, 13 Celsius or 14 in the west. 11 or 12 in the east, where it does stay dry across East Anglia and the southeast until after dark, I think, with some brightness, although the cloud will thicken. And then through the evening, it's wet for many. The rain, heavy and persistent across southwestern areas, could cause some issues. But it does eventually, through Sunday, clear eastwards. And next week will eventually end up being dry.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Welcome back, everybody. Patrick Christys here on GB News. I'm with you all the way through until 6 p.m. Loads of you have been getting in touch. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Can I just give a shout-out, just before we get stuck into our People's Poll, for one of the best emails that I've ever had in, and it's from Glyn. He says, we are 2 South Sea queens, and we love you, Patrick. Thank you very much. You speak for us. He says, the old gays are with you. Thank you very much, Glyn. It's always the man. Right, when it comes to filling gaps in Britain's economy, people agree with Keir Starmer, apparently. That's according to our GB News People's Poll. When asked who you want to fill gaps in the economy, 60% of you said you want the government to prioritise training British workers, while only 9% favour immigration. So this is the results of our People's Poll. Now, 60% of you, 60%, think that you want to train up British workers, while only 9% favour immigration. It's great, this. It's right on brand, because we'll be talking about this throughout the show as I ask you, and indeed a whole host of guests, whether the old student visa thing is just a big immigration con. When voters are asked whether they would support changing Britain's current relationship with the EU to a Swiss-style relationship, only 32% of voters said that they would support this, falling to 15% among Conservatives, 13% among Leavers. Just adding fuel to that fire, isn't it, that realistically people don't think that they want anything close to with the European Union. I dare say they're not particularly happy with what we've got at the minute, especially when we have a look at what's going on in the Channel, and especially when we have a look at those net migration figures. The next one, do you, the public, support England's footballers taking the knee at the World Cup? Well, get a load of this. They do, according to our poll. 40% of voters supported this, 23% opposed it. Not convinced that means everyone supports it. It is just 40%, but still, there you go. Joining me now is the Professor of Politics at Kent University to pick through the bones of our People's Polls. It's Matthew Goodwin. Matthew, thank you very, very much. Look, I'll start with you on this. British jobs for British workers seems to essentially be the motto there from that first one.
Yeah, absolutely, Patrick. When you present people with that trade-off, should we invest in British workers or should we prioritise high immigration? The vast majority of people, about 60%, say, I'd much rather prioritise training and educating British workers. So, going back to that Brexit referendum, in a sense, that was partly about this. It was about trying to reshape the settlement around something different. It was about trying to get the economy off this dependency on high-skill migration. And now even Keir Starmer and the Labour Party, as we saw earlier in the week, have come out giving this pretty important speech saying this is where they want to go, is to make Britain a little bit less dependent upon migration and invest more in British workers.
Yeah, indeed. And I think this is going to be a popular thing, especially when we have a look at those net migration figures. Can I just get you quickly on something? It's slightly off-brand, but I think it's relevant, of course, because you are 100% absolutely stellar stuff. Professor of Politics at the University of Kent University, great institution, fabulous institution, well worth going to, well worth studying politics there. But some universities, less so, some would say, and some of the courses, less so as well. Could we be doing more, in your humble opinion, to get people out of, a lifetime of student debt and more apprenticeships, more into work? Could that be a good way of getting British jobs for British workers, not doing underwater basket weaving somewhere?
Well, at the Brexit referendum and the aftermath of that, we did see a big effort within Westminster to change the conversation, to talk about adult skills, to invest in apprenticeships, to spend more on the further education colleges. We had a big review of the education system, which essentially said, hang on a minute, for 50 years we've been giving university graduates a lot more than we've been giving non-graduates. And we've also seen the Conservatives outline that adult skills bill and to try and change that conversation. What's happened since, in my view at least, is we've begun to lose sight of that. And I think we've begun to perhaps lose sight of how we're going to reform all of these big institutions so that they do a lot more for people who have been on the wrong side of change for the last 50 years. And in universities, Patrick, that means we've got to think about linking them up with local colleges, employers. Why isn't the apprenticeship system working as well as it should be working? And how can we better skill up and train up adults to get into the labour market?
And potentially bad news for universities in a sense as well, if the student visa system is curtailed, because I think there's a lot of reliance there. But I'll have to talk to you about that another time. Matthew Goodwin, politics professor at Kent University, reacting to the initial wave of our People's Poll right here on GB News. But joining me now is editor of the Sunday Mirror, Nigel Nelson. Nigel, thank you very much. Well, when it comes to England football players taking the knee, apparently 40% of people that we surveyed said that they were in favour of it. I think it was 26% said that they weren't. I'm not quite sure I believe our own People's Poll here, Nigel. I'll say it. I'm brave enough to say it. Why do you think 40% of people still support taking the knee?
I think that I'm not surprised about that result. I think most people feel that that's a reasonable gesture. If England players want to do that, they should be allowed to do it. I think they should have been allowed to, or Harry Kane should have been allowed to wear the One Love armband, but FIFA decided against it. I mean, I think taking the knee now has actually gone a bit beyond just simply Black Lives Matter. I think it is actually It is more a protest against all forms of discrimination. And I think that obviously Brits feel much the same way, which is why 40% support the idea in your poll.
Indeed. I mean, I'm quite glad that it's moved away from it singularly being about Black Lives Matter, if indeed what you're saying is true, because one thing that never ceases to amaze me is the lack of awareness when it comes to Black Lives Matter. Publishing a manifesto that calls for things like the radical redistribution of wealth and the breakdown of the nuclear family, as it were. It's arguably Marxist and also questionable as to exactly where all of the funding goes. But, of course, we're not really allowed to talk about that because that wouldn't be very PC now, would it? But let's move on to Brexit. And it appears, anyway, that our people's poll, people don't really back us moving to a Swiss-style Brexit deal, which I suppose is a bit like the one we've got now with more holes in it.
Well, I think the point here is that floating the idea of a Swiss-style deal was really to get a debate going. What the question really is whether or not you want frictionless trade with Europe, which means closer ties with Europe. Now, what is not surprising is in the poll, the majority of Remainers, such as myself, would be quite happy with a Swiss-style deal. On the basis we voted to remain, we're certainly not going to object to the idea of being in the single market. I think if you put that in context, the question really is how you would actually be in the single market. And the first question is, do we want closer ties with Europe post-Brexit? That doesn't mean ripping up Brexit.
Well, some would argue, sorry to cut you off at the knees, but some would argue it does mean ripping up Brexit, actually, because to ensure the smooth trade of goods across borders, an EU-Swiss arrangement removes all ID checks, yeah, fine, but we do have to pay into the EU coffers. We would have to sign up to the Schengen free travel area, apparently, and also contribute to the EU budget, as I've said, and maybe accept more EU laws, which I think, let's be honest with you, is ripping up Brexit, isn't it?
Yes, and I wouldn't support that at all. The point about the Swiss deal is it is a bespoke deal. It's not kind of an off-the-peg job that we could approach either. The Swiss have been negotiating that for 30 years. You've got something like 20 different bilateral agreements. What I'm talking about here is the debate over whether, in principle, we'd like to have closer trading ties with Europe. The kind of deal that we might end up with is not the Swiss deal. It would be our own deal. But the starting point for Brexiteers is, do you want those closer ties?
OK, all right. Now, very, very, very finally, it's not a long answer. This is just two numbers. The score tonight, England-USA. Hit me. Go.
No. England 2-0.
Good, great, that'll do. Thank you very much. Right, you are watching Patrick Christys here on GB News. Up next, nurses are going on strike in one of the most controversial actions in decades. I'm absolutely fizzing about this, but I appreciate there are views on both sides. I get a real mixed bag in my inbox, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Some of you bang in favour of a nurses' strike. You think they do an incredible job, they're massively underpaid. A lot of you think, well, hang on a minute, if this lot go on strike, people will die, and I'm not banging in favour of that. Get in touch, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Nurses' strike action coming your way next, but first, it's your latest headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 3:36. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. The Health Secretary is refusing to back down over nurses' pay demands ahead of their first national strike in over a century. Steve Barclay says he can't agree to what he describes as a massive 17.6% pay rise. Staff in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will walk out for 2 days on the 15th and 20th of December. And we'll be back shortly when we return to Patrick. Don't go anywhere.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
OK, now it's time for a story I've been all over like a rash, rather ironically, because nurses in England, Wales and Northern Ireland are to strike for 2 days in December. It's been confirmed now this will be the biggest strike in the history of the NHS. And with the country facing a winter of discontent, possible rail strike, well, definite rail strikes, postal strikes, out-of-control inflation, potentially lecturers and teachers will go on strike, although the way our education system's going, you wouldn't flipping notice, would you? Questions are being asked if the government can get the country back on track. Well, joining me now on the show is GB News' political reporter, Olivia Rutley. Olivia, thank you very much. A tightrope, this, for Rishi Sunak, because I think a lot of people would quite like to see the Conservatives stand up to these unions, a bit of a backs-to-the-wall chaps attitude. The flip side of it is we also want people to get looked after if they get ill.
Yes, and these strikes, the first of their kind, have been organised for basically the worst possible time for the country. They're going to be in the run-up to Christmas at exactly the same time when office Christmas parties are, for example, which tends to lead in a spike in A&E emergencies. Then you've also got the pressure of elderly people who tend to get ill in the colder months around the winter. And, of course, this is against the backdrop, as always, of a 7.1 million NHS waiting list. These strikes, just 5 days of strikes, are expected to see 30,000 operations postponed and treatment like dialysis and chemotherapy.
But hang on, I thought it was, oh, gosh, you know, it won't impact people's healthcare, don't worry. Well, there's 30,000 people there who are impacted, let alone the people on dialysis and chemo.
Yes, as you say, it makes life quite difficult for Rishi Sunak. He's already said that the 19% pay rise that nurses are demanding is quite obviously unaffordable, with his words. But it's quite hard to see how any kind of compromise is going to be reached, because Rishi Sunak is looking at a pay rise in the sort of low single figures. And to try and bridge between that and the 19% pay rise that nurses are demanding is looking pretty much impossible at the moment.
Yeah.
So it seems quite likely, though we hate to think about it, that this might not be the last of the nurses' strike.
Where's Keir Starmer on all of this?
Yeah, well, Keir Starmer is fudging a little bit. He wants to see a rise in nurses' pay, and he is saying that the government should commit to a rise in nurses' pay, but he's not quite going as far as to say that they should commit to the whole rise that the nurses are asking for. And Rishi Sunak has shot back, saying that Keir Starmer needs to stand up to the union paymasters. But complication is that in the country, people are obviously very fed up with not getting their treatment, obviously a very long waiting list. But there is a lot of warm feeling towards nurses since the pandemic. And there is a feeling that as they are leaving the profession in their droves, there probably is a case for a pay rise. So it's quite difficult for leaders of both parties to come down too firmly on either side without alienating the electorate.
Yes, indeed. And look, the big losers in all of this, no matter which way you dress it up, are patients and general people, right? Because, you know, they're the ones who get sick, especially around this time of year as well. Look, Olivia, thank you very much. Expertly summarised as ever. Olivia Utley there, our political reporter. What do you make of this, ladies and gentlemen? Because this is, well, yet again, every day I'm talking about nurses' strikes. It has been pointed out to me that every single day this week I have teed off on a different aspect of our public sector. I would quite like to point out, I do not despise people like nurses, far from it. You wouldn't want me saving a life, I wouldn't be able to do it, and I think nurses do tremendous work. That said, I am more on the side of patience. Get in touch. You can see the email address on your screens there. If you're listening on radio, it's gbviews@gbnews.uk. Try to change my mind. My view on it is I'm very sympathetic to the idea that maybe you don't feel like you're paid enough. I'm very sympathetic to the idea that you work in incredibly stressful situations, and it is just at times, I imagine, an incredibly dirty and incredibly difficult job, dealing with a whole smorgasbord of society, especially one would imagine in an A&E on a Saturday night. I understand all of that, but if you strike, people will die. And we've got a massive backlog of people waiting for routine operations. We've got a massive backlog of people waiting for just general healthcare. We're also seeing now GPs are apparently only wanting to work 9 to 5 because anything more would discriminate against female GPs who've got a right to a family life. Of course they've got a right to a family life. Why don't you go and work in recruitment instead? Anyway, the strikes just don't seem to stop. Should workers still be striking and punishing other working people? It's other working people who'll suffer, won't it? Joining me now is Rob Williams. He's left to take that, and he's here, a trade union organiser. Thank you very much, Rob. Great to have you back on the show, mates. Right, look, it's where to start with these strikes, isn't it? Let's start with the nurses. Are you sympathetic to a nurses' strike, even though people will die?
Well, of course I'm sympathetic and supportive of the nurses. The point is, people are dying. The problem is the NHS is in crisis. The problem is that projections mean that we could be 140,000 nurses short in the NHS, and that's because the pressures on the NHS, the privatisation in the NHS, and because some nurses have lost a fifth of their income over the last 12 years. So, of course, we support them. And by the way, I think the majority of workers in this country are supportive. I even think the majority of patients are supportive because they don't come from nowhere.
But have you got any other... Yeah, just quickly...
Friends are nurses.
Yeah, just on that, because Mick Lynch wheels out a very similar line, which is that he says that he thinks he's got mass public support. As far as I can tell, when it comes to Mick Lynch, that extends to some emails in his inbox. Well, I can tell you what, I wouldn't show you some of the things that come through in my inbox on this, because that would indicate the exact opposite. Have you got any proof that there is mass public support for this?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the TUC called a demonstration like a few months ago. There were nearly 100,000, but that's just a drop in the ocean. The reason why these strikes are popular is because the vast majority of workers, probably all workers, are suffering in the biggest cost of living crisis in generations. Real inflation is over 14%. And that is why it's absolutely right that workers take action. In fact, we in the Socialist Party believe that workers should take action altogether. You know that,
and here we have and here, Rob, I think we have the answer, don't we? Though, yes, exactly. But I think what you just said there is, I'm paraphrasing slightly, but you'd be bang in favour of a general strike. And when I hear the words general strike, there are two ways of tarting that up, Rob, aren't there? There's a way which is workers of the world unite, we need better wages. There is another one which is let's bring down this Tory government. And in the case of a general strike, let's keep it relatively specific to nurses in this case, it is over Christmas playing roulette with people's lives in order to play politics, is it not?
No, that's not the issue. We have got a Tory government here that has tried to reinvent himself. Are we on the fourth, fifth reinvention of this Tory government? It's been a disaster. It's been a catastrophe and a crisis for working class people, and I think majority of people in this society.
But why are you affecting the working class, Rob?
Because it's a political strategy. This is a government that needs to go. Working class people are having a disaster. They can't keep the.
But you're causing this disaster, Rob. It's working class people, Rob, who need to get to work every day on the trains. They can't do that. It's working class people who can't afford private healthcare. They've got to go to the NHS. It's working class people who, want to send something with the Royal Mail and not DHL or whatever any of the more expensive ones are. The people who suffer here are the working class.
The working class people who are on those trains are taking part in going to the NHS. You're right. That's what working class people have. They're the same people who can't turn the heating on. They're the same people that can't go shopping because they can't afford food. Do you know that nurses in some hospitals have got food banks? Do you understand this? It's a disaster. So therefore, what do? Do we carry on with a Tory government that doesn't care, that is incompetent, that is incapable, that the only people they're interested in protecting is big business and the super rich?
Look, I absolutely get what you're saying when it comes to the idea this Tory government has reinvented itself more than the Sugar Babes and indeed Madonna put together. Yes, I understand that, OK, and I'm not disputing that. But are you at risk, or people with your political bent anyway, at risk of actually doing something quite self-defeating here? Because the government could either give the nurses a 19% pay rise, which I think by anyone's stretch of imagination is a heck of a lot, or what it could say to nurses is, we'll pay you what you're paid now, and we will just absolutely 100% hammer cheaper foreign nurses. And that wouldn't do British workers any good whatsoever, would it?
Well, I've got to laugh, right? Your programme, all it does is try and the divide and rule tactic, try and counterpose, British workers against immigrants.
Well, no, because that's the way to fill the gap, isn't it? If British nurses... It's not me trying to do it, it's literally what would happen.
We have a shortage. Why do you think we have a shortage of skilled nurses in this country? Is because the lack of training, because the wages are down by about 20% over the last 12 years, because this government is ravaging our public services, including the NHS. So therefore, it's not a question, the reason why at the moment you have hospital trusts employing agency nurses at an incredible cost is because the total dysfunction and ruination of the NHS. So it's not counterposing anything there. Look, on this issue about the 19% pay rise, the RTN and the health unions have put a pay claim in. It's an above inflation pay rise. The Tories are offering something like 5% inflation.
Yeah, but we don't know what... This is the other thing, isn't it? You've got absolutely no idea, because none of us have any idea what Labour are offering. Labour are playing quite a shrewd game. Now, can I just say, if you had as much public support for this as you think you do, the Labour Party would be full square behind you, wouldn't they? But they're not. And I can't help but feel very lastly on this, Rob, there are more people currently who will be affected by a nurses' strike, i.e. will miss operations, miss chemo, miss dialysis, etc., or already on an NHS waiting list. Let's be honest, there's millions of them. There's more of those people than nurses, and I don't think he's going to bring the public with you if they all do one over Christmas.
They are missing operations now. There is massive waiting lists now. And I tell you what, for the Royal College of Nursing to take strike action, it shows how much they've been put to the limit. This is the first action they'll be taking in their history. And I can assure you, they will put huge guarantees in to try and protect life. But people are dying now, and people are on waiting lists right now because the NHS is being ruined by the Tories and big business.
OK, Rob, perfectly entitled to your views. Good stuff. Always enjoy our back and forth. Rob Williams there, a trade union organiser. That was on the nurses' strike, but of course there's potentially a general strike brewing. We'll get stuck into that. Now, check this out, people. A report has alleged that top scientists, including Sir Patrick Vallance, essentially decided, well, helped maybe, to just quash claims that there was a lab leak when it came to the coronavirus. There was a paper published in Nature Medicine in March 2020 argued that a natural spillover event caused the pandemic, i.e. it leaked from a lab. It's now gone mainstream. It's in several different national newspapers. We touched on it a little bit yesterday, but viewers will remember that we had to kind of, well, wrap it up rather too quickly because we're towards the end of an hour, which we're in danger of doing again. Angus Dalgleish joins me, who's been raising this issue. And Angus, yes, there you are. Good stuff. All right, well, look, you are actually very, very well qualified, aren't you, Angus, as you're going to explain to our viewers and listeners now to sum up the fact that you think it did leak from a lab, is that right? And it was covered up?
Well, yes, I don't think. I saw the evidence. I've been working with the Norwegian team for well over a decade, and we came up with a very successful HIV vaccine candidate, which went into trials, etc. And it worked much better than the standard approaches of using the whole of the virus envelope. So when the sequence became available, my colleagues called me up from Norway and said, would you like to help us design a COVID vaccine, again, from the same principles we did with the HIV? So I said, yes, let's look at the sequence. And when they looked at the sequence, my colleagues said, this is very clear that this is not normal. And when they published the sequence, there was a very unusual, abnormal bit in it called a cleavage site, which is something which breaks the cell membrane of a human cell, makes it very easy to enter. Now, what was really surprising was that they mentioned everything about it, but here, hiding in pure sight, they didn't even mention it in the paper. So we looked at the sequence a little bit more clearly, and then we found that there were 6 insert sites around where the receptor of the virus binds to a human cell so it can enter into it and infect it. Now, when we pointed this out, we were told, oh, they're just random errors, just natural mutations. No, they couldn't be natural mutations. This is what we argued, because they gave the virus a very positive charge. So to reduce it to simplicity, it meant that the virus didn't just have to attach to the cell and then work its way in through a receptor, but it was more like a magnet on a fridge. It got near the cell and went bang, and these inserts basically latched on like leeches to the cell, which made it much
Can I ask you a couple of questions? Can I ask you a couple of questions that I think maybe your average non-scientific, non-medical man and woman watching or listening to this now will think, which was that, A, why was this created then, if COVID was made in a lab? And B, why was it covered up by the likes of Sir Patrick Vallance, who was front and centre during the whole coronavirus crisis? Why was that covered up?
Well, first of all, I was staggered that people saw our paper, went to all the top people, and it was ignored and cancelled, and as you say, covered up. And I thought the evidence is so strong. Why would anybody keep trying to say, well, it's still coming natural focus? And we know that Vallance and Farrar and Fauci and Whitty, these people, knew about this evidence, but they decided that it was best to cover it up.
So Chris Whitty covered it up, in your view?
Pardon?
So, in your view, Chris Whitty covered up the fact that coronavirus, the alleged fact that coronavirus was made and leaked from a Chinese laboratory?
Yes, well, we know that there are there's emails which are under freedom of information, in which there's Fauci, Vallance and Farrar describing about the virus and how they're covered up. And we know that Whitty was involved too, but he just wasn't on those particular emails. But he and Vallance determined policy. And so they decided that even though it looked like there was some evidence, it wasn't compelling, and therefore they should put it to one side. But that wasn't what surprised me. It was the fact they went to outrageous lengths to make sure it never saw the light of day. Our paper was turned down by Nature Medicine, Lancet, Journal of Virology, Science, and it was the same response. It was, we turned down within 5 hours. This paper is very good scientifically, but it is not in the public interest. How was not discussing where this virus came from not in the public interest? I mean, it clearly showed that the changes I described had been described by researchers in Wuhan who were basically stitching up with bat coronaviruses to see if they could make them infect cells. And they published papers saying, oh, we're clever. We've put this into the virus and now the bat virus will infect cells. So it wasn't like it was subversion never seen the light of day. No, I think it was the fact that these people were all succinctly involved in this, particularly Fauci, and funding it. And they wanted to protect themselves from the fact that going all the way back, instead of saving us from COVID, you're talking about a group of people who had actually been funding the work that's caused it. And it was a lab leak. I don't believe it was a deliberate leak, because why would they have had a deliberate leak when they had no vaccine and no treatment and total chaos in China?
All right, look, there you go. Look, thank you very, very much. I was getting shouted at a bit there, rightly so, because we do have timings to hit, which I routinely miss. But I appreciate you coming on. I wanted to hear you out on that, and I think you've answered it and cleared a lot of things up for a lot of people and revealed something that I suspect many of us already thought we knew. Professor Angus Dalgleish, thank you very, very much. Well, in a statement, the Government Office for Science said, the Government Chief Scientific Advisor ensures that policies and decisions are informed by the best scientific evidence. The GCSA promotes full transparency and an open exchange of ideas and scientific opinion, as the email exchange reflects. Right, there we go. What do you make of that, ladies and gents? GBViews at gbnews.uk. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. We've got loads coming your way, but before that, it's your weather.
Hello again, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. It's turned out to be a fine day for most of us, although not for all, and it will stay clear for most of us into tonight.
before the next band of wet and windy weather arrives from the Atlantic. That one is lining up to the west of the UK at the moment. Ahead of that, this ridge of high pressure, still plenty of isobars on the map, and so still a breezy end to the day, especially towards the north and northwest. And that's where we've seen showers continuing during the afternoon, and there'll still be some affecting western Scotland, perhaps parts of West Wales, northwest England, during the hours of darkness. But for most, it's clear spells, especially towards central and eastern areas. Here, temperatures dipping to 3 or 4 Celsius, a few mist patches first thing this weekend. But it's much milder at first this weekend in the west. 12 Celsius for some western coast because at this stage the wind is picking up, the cloud is thickening. And for Northern Ireland, eventually western and southwest Scotland, we're going to see rain setting during the morning, that rain reaching Wales, parts of southwest England by lunchtime. The rain initially on and off, light and patchy, and it's accompanied by a strengthening wind. Gales around western coasts, but that wind coming from the south means that it will be mild, 13 Celsius in the west and the northwest. In the east and southeast, it's largely dry until the evening. That's when the rain arrives here. And the rain turns heavy and persistent, especially for Scotland. Could cause some issues because of the very wet weather we've seen recently. But it does sweep through on Saturday night. It's clearing southeast England first thing Sunday. And we've got a brighter start for many. Not a frosty one, though, because it's still going to be a breezy old night, and there'll still be some showers into western Scotland during Sunday morning, 1 or 2 arriving into Northern Ireland, parts of Wales and western England. Now, further southwest, the rain eases for a time, but it is going to come back for Sunday afternoon before eventually clearing on Monday, and next week looks drier for all of us.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Welcome back. You're watching GB News. It's 1 minute past 4. I'm Bethany Elsey, here to bring you up to date. We'll start with some breaking news. Teachers in Scotland will strike for a further 16 days next year over a pay dispute. The Educational Institute of Scotland say the consecutive days of action, split across every council in the country, will happen in January and February. It's after yesterday's strike closed nearly all primary schools and secondary schools. The government is refusing to back down over nurses' pay demands ahead of their first national strike in over a century. Staff in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will walk out for 2 days on the 15th and 20th of December. The Royal College of Nursing accused the government of rejecting formal talks as an alternative to industrial action. But Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says what the union is asking for is simply unaffordable.
Look, I have enormous respect and gratitude to our nurses, as everyone does, for the incredible job they do. And look, I know things are difficult right now for everyone because of what's happening with inflation. And that's why our plans that we outlined last week will get a grip of inflation and bring it down. That's really important. And in the meantime, what the unions are asking for, I think, is a 19% pay rise. And I think most people watching will recognise that that's obviously unaffordable. And that's why I'm pleased that the Health Secretary is sitting down, talking to the union, and hopefully we can find a way through this.
Well, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the government is shirking its responsibilities.
Nurses have been driven to this by the government, and that's a badge of shame for the government. They've never taken strike action before. And for patients, this is going to be devastating news. Nurses don't want to go on strike.
The government says the bullying investigation into the Deputy Prime Minister has been expanded. Downing Street confirmed a third formal complaint has now been lodged against Dominic Raab. He denies any wrongdoing and says his behaviour and conduct is always professional. A former soldier has been convicted of killing a man more than 30 years ago at an army checkpoint in Northern Ireland. 53-year-old David Jonathan Holden was found guilty of the manslaughter of Aidan McSpenny in County Tyrone in 1988. Holden admitted firing the shot that killed him, but claimed it was an accident. Paul Young is national spokesperson for the Northern Ireland Veterans Movement. He says they'll appeal the verdict.
Veterans, I can say, will be deeply disappointed by this verdict. I'm saddened by it, but it's not over for David yet, because his team are, as far as I'm aware, are going to appeal the decision, and I think eventually, if necessary, go to the Supreme Court.
A woman with Down syndrome has lost a legal battle at the Court of Appeal. Heidi Crowther had challenged legislation which allows the abortion of babies with the condition up until birth. In England, Wales and Scotland, there's a 24-week limit for terminations, but that can be extended if there's substantial chance the child could be born with physical or mental abnormalities. The Foreign Secretary has announced a package of hands-on support to help Ukraine through the winter. The country is still experiencing power blackouts after Russian airstrikes hit key infrastructure. During his first official trip to Kyiv, James Cleverly pledged to send 35 more emergency vehicles, as well as a further £3 million to help rebuild the country. He says it's important the UK showed its support.
Ultimately, I think it's incredibly important that the UK demonstrates to the Ukrainian people, who are bearing the brunt of this brutality from Russia, that we are standing shoulder to shoulder with them through our military support, through our humanitarian support, through our economic support, but also through the visible support.
And Wales's World Cup hopes hang by a thread after their last-minute defeat to Iran. And the World Cup hopes of Wales... Oh, sorry, there's a problem with my autocue there. 2-0 was the final score this morning. Both goals were conceded late in stoppage time after Wales were reduced to 10 men after their keeper was sent off with just 5 minutes remaining. The result leaves them bottom of Group B with only one game to play. Yep, that's right, it's against England. Former football manager Harry Redknapp told GB News Iran's win was well-deserved.
Must be truthful, I wanted Wales to win desperately. I was really cheering Wales on, but Iran were much the better team throughout the game. It wasn't just the 2 goals and the sending off. They'd hit the woodwork on a couple of occasions and really looked a very good team today, Iran. I mean, it just makes England's result look even better when we battered them the other day, you know. But, yeah, in fairness, Wales didn't play well today. They were thoroughly well beaten, and Iran deserved the win.
And tonight, it's England's turn against the USA, and they're chasing 3 points to secure a place in the knockout stages. We'll bring that more to you later. This is GB News, you're up to date. Now let's get back to Patrick.
Well, welcome back, everybody. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News, and we're getting stuck into loads in the first week of my new Friday show, 3 till 6. Yes, 5 days a week now, 3 till 6 p.m. You can't get rid of me. World Cup mania. GPs pushing for shorter hours, and foreign students could face a ban from UK universities. We're doing the absolute lots of it here. England are taking on the USA tonight in Qatar. They go into that game following a resounding, a thumping 6-2 victory against Iran. Essentially, they're a pub team. And a win would see them through to the next round of the tournament, but can they do it? But a disappointing result for Wales this morning in their first World Cup in more than 60 years. They did lose 2-0 to that pub team, Iran. And we have our very own GB News People's Poll as well, where 60% of people want to see Britain prioritise training up British workers rather than embracing endless mass immigration. And Sunak has said that he could curb the levels of foreign students following record levels of net migration. What do you reckon to all of that? Do you really think that the old student visa scheme is just a bit of an immigration con, a backdoor into Britain? Get in touch with your thoughts on everything we're discussing today. Two big ones for you. GPs, do you think they should swing their doors open after 5 p.m? Nobody else works 9 to 5 anymore, do they? Why should GPs on 112 large every single year just have a bit of time off? Hey, what do you think about all of that? And, of course, as well, yes, we are asking whether or not you think we should clamp down on those pesky student visas. GBviews at gbnews.uk. Football's coming home. Southgate's men are gearing up for their game against the USA in Qatar tonight. By the way, one time I say that, it will be right. I've got years left to live, so eventually we'll win a World Cup. But for Wales, a 2-0 loss to Iran is a major blow to their World Cup campaign. Wales suffered a couple of late goals, which puts them in danger of dropping out in the group stages. But it was a hugely meaningful victory for Iran. Yes, you can't separate politics and football, can you, unfortunately? But England and the USA meet in the group stage of the World Cup. They met in 2010, actually, in South Africa, didn't they? Gosh, we all remember that turgid 1-1 draw, wasn't it? Robert Green and Fabio Capello. Anyway, there's also an added dimension to the clash, that Gareth Southgate has become a sort of mentor to the USA head coach, so presumably he will be woke as well. It all kicks off at 7 p.m, but we can go live now to Doha with GB News' national reporter, international reporter at this stage, really, Paul Hawkins. Paul, has it started bouncing in the souk?
Yeah, that is the word. In fact, they've been going for 2 hours. You say we're in the souk in Doha. Frankly, it looks more like Buenos Aires. Just have a look at that. This huge... I know we talk about these kind of fan trains, these mass of humanity that moves down the souk, but honestly, this is clearly a pre-organised meet-up of pretty much all the thousands of Argentine fans that have come to Doha, all in this square. They've been banging drums. You can see Argentina umbrellas in the back, and huge flags of Maradona as well. And then this group, much smaller group of Mexican fans that made their way along here with Castanetas. Argentina playing Mexico tomorrow, and they kind of came together in the middle, and you could hardly hear yourself think about half an hour ago. So at the moment the noise has died down, probably while they're just catching their breath. But Argentina take on Mexico tomorrow. Right now the Netherlands are beating Ecuador 1-0. Earlier Qatar managed to score a goal, but they were beaten by the Senegalese 3-1. In fact, look, they're just getting their voice again. Here they go. And then earlier, let's concentrate on Wales, because they really needed to beat Iran. Let's be honest, they didn't play well. Kiefer Moore making the keeper work for it in the first 15 minutes of their game, but after that it was downhill really, and in the second half Iran really moved through the gears, hitting the post twice, and then it took until 8 minutes into extra time at the end of full time for Iran to get the winner, and then 1 minute after that they got the second. So Iran looking good to qualify for the second round for the first time in their history. Wales need England and the USA to draw tonight, and then they need to beat England on Tuesday. So England are playing the USA in, just under 3 hours time. This is what the English and the American fans have been telling us.
It's a tough one with England, but it's going to be exciting. The team's young, full of energy, and we have so many Americans coming in Qatar supporting. So.
And we're just the USA.
Yeah.
We're just good. We're just going to win it easy, go through, go all the way, take the cup home. That's what you're here for.
I think Harry Kane's got to go on this sheet, isn't he? He's got to go on the score sheet. Harry Kane, Saka's playing back good, isn't he? Saka is good.
No. Mexico and England will beat the USA 4-0.
Yeah! England! So it's going to be interesting, Patrick. The Americans will be a lot more of a test for England than Iran were. It's a late kickoff, so expect a high-tempo game, and don't write off the Americans at all. But on paper, this should be an England win, and if they do win, they'll qualify for the second round. There's another train, another fan train. Let's work out where they're from. This lot that are coming through right now. It looks like Argentina. There's a few Senegal fans in there as well, and they're in full voice. It's all kicking off. It's always kicking off. Every night in the souk, it's kicking off.
Fantastic stuff, Paul. I love it. I absolutely love this. This is great stuff. Paul Hawkins, thank you very much. Can I just ask you, Paul, I don't know if you can actually hear me. Will at some point a bit later on, will the England fans be making their way through that? Is that like the gateway to where it's all quite literally kicking off?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It probably takes about 10 minutes to walk from one end of the souk to the other, and there's loads of little alleyways, with guys selling stuff in their shops. This is the main thoroughfare. The England game doesn't finish till midnight here in Doha. It's busy here till about 1 or 2 a.m, so they could come down here and there could be an England train passing through here. But at the moment, we haven't seen one. And you know what? There's been lots of fans singing lots of songs. I haven't actually heard Sweet Caroline, 3 lines in full voice yet. So there's still work to do for the England fans, certainly to get to the South American standards, because Argentina, Brazil, Mexico, even Ecuador, and even when they're not playing, they're just walking up and down here, singing and having a great time. There's not a drop of alcohol in sight.
Well, I was going to actually say that. I mean, there's a joke to be made somewhere about the England train being on strike, Paul, but I won't make it. And also something else about perhaps why the chap with the Diego Maradona flag has got more energy than anybody else. But I couldn't possibly make that either. But the beer or lack of, it's not having an impact. The lack of the beer.
It's not. You can still go and get your beer in the hotels, in the hotel bars and in the fan zones. They're still selling beer. You can still get drunk. It's an expensive exercise. But a lot of fans are thinking we don't need it. We don't need it. And to be honest, the problem with alcohol is it is great. It does act like a social lubricant for a lot of people, but it also introduces an element of unpredictability. Hello. It also introduces an element of unpredictability. So without that, it feels really safe here. It feels really chilled. I say chilled, obviously it's loud, but you don't think anyone's going to kick off at any moment. So, it's a unique World Cup atmosphere, still very positive.
Paul, you're an absolute legend. Keep up the good work, mate. Paul Hawkins there in Doha for us. Our man in the very, very lively souk. You love to see it. Come on, England. OK, right. Let's talk now to sports journalist Ben Jacobs, who is with us now. Ben, great stuff. Thank you very much. Right, OK, so Kane is fit. We're not at risk of another metatarsal gate, are we? How do you rate England's chances tonight? Because I've seen enough. It's definitely coming home this time.
You're more confident than I am talking about England winning the World Cup so early into a World Cup. But I think the point is they showed against Iran that they're very clinical going forwards. And with players like Bellingham and Saka on form, Phil Foden was able to come off the bench. There's not necessarily an over-reliance on Harry Kane. And that means that England have got opportunities going forwards to really stretch their opponents and find goals from all over the field. So the question mark against more serious opposition is going to be how they defend, and Gareth Southgate won't have been happy to have let in 2 against Iran. And we know that in the most simple of terms, that England defensively, there's a question mark, but from the perspective of going forward, they look very fluid and balanced, and they're definitely able to cut through defences, even against more serious opposition. The USA will be no pushover, but make no mistake, England very much favourites this evening, and they know as well that they can qualify for the knockout stage by winning, and that, I think, is why Gareth Southgate is likely to name an unchanged 11 and stick with what worked going forwards against Iran. And England will certainly be favourites, but they'll know the USA very well because a number of their players play in the Premier League, including, of course, Christian Pulisic at Chelsea.
Yeah, well, I'm quite concerned that Gareth Southgate might have acted as too much of a mentor to the American manager. But realistically, even with... I get what you're saying about England being weak at the back. I mean, as a Manchester United fan, there's a particular chap who's at the back there who... let's not talk about him, actually. But, you know, we don't actually need Harry Kane to score goals, do we? Because we've got, you know, fabulous Jude Bellingham there, Jack Grealish. I mean, it's great for him. There's not a pint in sight. He's going to be on top form throughout the remainder of this tournament. We've got that boy Saka, who's walking them in at the minute. Marcus Rashford, we never know whether he's going to turn into Theo Walcott or Pele, but he scored in the last game. So we seem to be doing all right. We can score from any angle.
We can, and I wonder whether Grealish will get more of an involvement. He scored that goal. Maybe instead of Black Friday from the US perspective, it'll be Jack Friday, and he'll be the one that gets England going. But we know England can do this. Even in the warm-up games when their form was a bit patchier, they proved in a short spell against Germany that they could score a ton of goals from different places and players. But this is all about just getting through. And if they can qualify against the USA, they've got, to some extent, even though they want top spot, a bit more of a free game to chop and change against Wales, and therefore other players might get some game time. James Maddison might be fit. Phil Foden may be more involved. Bit of a surprise that he didn't start the first game. And then you get the opportunity as a squad rather than only as a starting 11 to really take momentum into the knockout stage. And at the moment, we're not really judging England on can they win the World Cup necessarily because they've not been tested. What we're judging them on is do they have the form and the momentum that was lacking building up to the tournament to really have the confidence. So when it matters in a bigger game a bit later on in the tournament, then they'll have that belief to think that they can go all the way.
Absolutely. You don't want to peak too early. That's a big mistake that people make. And you're right to raise the possibility of Phil Foden getting more game time there. Of course, the Mancunian Messi. It'd be good to see him out and about. But just very quickly, I would absolutely hate to lose to the Americans for several different reasons. They don't call it football. They call it soccer, and that makes me want to be sick. They have the worst ever football chance known to man, and their football commentary, you know, the striker, he's approaching the opposition D and he's stuck it past the netminder right into the goal hole. We cannot lose to that lot. We cannot.
Well, I think everyone's billing it as football versus soccer, which is a little bit glib, but let's not forget that we actually invented the word soccer, and we have Soccer Aid, we have Soccer Saturday. But I get your point. I think you could audition for a US commentator and potentially get a job. But the downside for you is statistically, the US have never actually lost to England at a World Cup. 2 meetings, 1950 and 2010. They won 1-0 in 1950, and Rob Green handed America a draw with a horrible error for a Clint Dempsey goal in 2010. So if we are to get a victory, we'll be breaking history because they've got all of the records statistically at a World Cup, and we haven't, despite being favourites.
Well, look, it's the only time that it could ever be said that the Americans have got more history than us. Thank you very much, Ben. Ben Jacobs there, who's a sports journalist, sport expert. I did just get it in my ear then, and I stand by this. Maybe there should be a bet on this game, and that bet is that the loser has to keep James Corden. Anyway, as the anticipation of the huge Three Lions match tonight grows, let's just cross over now. Back to the pub we go. Sherborne in Elmert, where GB News' Yorkshire and Humber reporter is there. Thank you very much. What's going on, Anna, where you are, Anna Riley, in a rather festive England pub?
Hello again, Patrick. Yeah, it's that time of year, isn't it, when we've got Christmas decorations in the pub, but with the World Cup, we've got England flags as well. And the pub is filling up. It's filling up with excited England fans. I'm joined by one now, John Harrison. John, how are you feeling ahead of the match this evening, England versus USA?
I'm really excited, really looking forward to it. After Monday's game, played really well, so I think tonight, you know, hopefully we're going to take it up to the next level.
What are you predicting for the score?
Well, I think it's going to be a big win for England again, but I think our defence hasn't been playing that well, so I expect the USA to score. So I reckon it might be 4-1 to England.
4-1, you're saying. And what do you think to the actual team? You know, what do you think? How do you think they're performing?
I think they've been playing really well. They didn't do too well leading up to the tournament, but we played really well on Monday. Hopefully, you know, he'll be playing the same team again. I think you've got to put your best players out on the pitch when you're at the best tournament in the world, you know, rather than chopping and changing. But, you know, injuries can obviously change that. But, yeah, hopefully we'll have some consistency in selection.
And what do you think to England's chances?
I think we've got a real good chance. I think, you know, if we get through the group stages, you know, obviously anything can happen. But I really hope that we can get through the final, go one better than last time.
And you'd say football's coming home?
Absolutely. It's coming home.
It's coming home. It's coming home.
We're missing you already.
Football's coming home.
There we go, Patrick. Football's coming home.
Fantastic. Well, there we go. Yes, and they've still got a few hours to keep getting warmed up before the game starts. Thank you very much, Anna Riley there. Right, you are with me, Patrick Christys on GB News. We've done a lot of your football now, so we're going to move it on to more harder news. Our very own GB News People's Poll, 60% of you feel that British workers would be better for filling the gaps in the economy rather than filling it with cheap foreign labour. We're going to bring you all of the latest on that. Do you agree? I've got loads more coming your way as well. This shocking news, I wish it was shocking actually, it's just news the way the world's going at the minute, that GPs, they just want to work a cushy 9 to 5. So screw you and your working hours, or the fact that you'd have to take a day off work, or the fact that nobody else really, frankly, just works a normal 9 to 5, do they? No, GPs now are going to vote that they want to shut their doors at 5 p.m. This is despite, of course, massive waiting lists, people in a health crisis, left, right and centre. And you know why as well, just to top it all off, if that didn't wind you up enough? Oh, well, it's because it's discriminating, if you want to work longer hours, it's discriminating against female GPs who want to have families. I mean, for goodness sake, you can just go and get another job. Anyway, email in gbviews@gbnews.uk. We're also talking about strikes as well, so we'll be keeping it light all the way through. But yes, it's a short break right now. Make sure you get in touch, though. That email's on your screen.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Yes, welcome back, everybody. Patrick Christys here on GB News. And we're hitting all the big topics today. Of course, England do take on the USA in Qatar. We'll be going to that a little bit later on. We're also going to be talking about some more newsy topics, as it were. And one of the big ones that's popped off in the inbox, which is where I'm delving into now, gbviews@gbnews.uk. People getting in touch with their thoughts on this nurses' strike. 2 days of strike action, the 15th and the 20th of December. They have been announced. Apparently, they want around a 19% pay rise. How do you feel about this? Ian says people talk as if nurses are paid as poorly as care workers. They aren't. Their starting salaries are way higher, and you don't see care workers walking out. I think it's tapping in, easy for me to say, tapping in, Ian, to that question of morality, isn't it? Now, I completely understand. I want to make it abundantly clear. Nurses, tremendous job. at large, I suppose. Nurses do a good job. They save lives, they look after people in their times of need, and that job at times must be incredibly grim. And A&E on a Saturday night, especially with Black Eye Friday fast approaching, I imagine is a pretty bleak place to be. Do not get me wrong, but if you strike and people die, how do you look at yourself in the mirror, especially if it's coming down to a 19% pay rise? I'm sorry, no one's getting a 19% pay rise. It's not happening now. Anyway, Andy says they should take the names of those that strike and give them nothing. All the ones who refuse to strike should get a decent pay rise, as they hold the true values and principles of the nursing profession. It's strong stuff, Andy, that. And you know what? I think this is absolutely devastating because it's the way that it's been done as well. The Royal College of Nursing made out like, we've had a complete and utter overwhelming sense that all of our members want to strike. And that's not true. They aggregated the data. They did it by hospital trust, and then they went, OK, well, the vast majority of hospital trusts, sorry, just a majority, not even the vast majority of hospital trusts have voted to strike. But that is not true when it comes to the picture across the United Kingdom. Hospitals in the Midlands, for example, very few of those hospital trusts voted to strike. And there is massive, massive disquiet when it comes to the nursing community about walking out. 30,000 operations apparently could well be cancelled. People on dialysis, people on chemotherapy, they are going to miss out on treatment. We've got a massive backlog. That's not going to make it any better. And I'm sorry, but maybe, just maybe, they're doing themselves out of a job, because could we get cheaper, dare I say it, foreign nurses to come in and save the day? I'm not sure. What do you think? Keep these views coming in. Sandra says, absolutely disagree with nurses striking. They got extra cash during or after the pandemic, didn't they? Yes, actually, they have had 2 pay rises in 2 years, one of around 3%, one of around 4%. They already have better wage than most. This is according now to whatever her name was. And I was an NHS worker, and I can assure you that no nurse needs to strike or indeed use food banks. This is something that keeps coming my way whenever I speak to anyone from a union or a lot of nurses and GP. They go, we've got some nurses going to food banks. OK, that's terrible. I mean, I'm sure that some nurses are using food banks. Is that a wide thing? Is that due to maybe more circumstances in their life? I don't know. Your views, gbviews at gbnews.uk. It's important to say as well, yes, there were 3 people there, 3 of our lovely viewers and listeners who were dead against the nurses' strike. I do get emails in saying that I am a heartless so-and-so and that I think, we should pay nurses what they want. There are very much 2 sides to this, but there we go. Now, when it comes to filling the gaps in Britain's economy, people agree, apparently, with Keir Starmer. That's according to our very own GB News People's poll, and this has got a lot to do with immigration, because when asked who want to fill gaps in the economy, 60% of you want the government to prioritise training British workers as opposed to importing cheap foreign labour, i.e. mass migration going for growth. We should wean ourselves off the dependency on mass migration and start training British, backing British. When voters were asked whether or not they would support changing Britain's current relationship with the European Union to something more Swiss, only 32% of voters say they supported this, falling to 15% among Conservatives, 13% among Leavers as a whole. Now, just to briefly fill you in, essentially the Swiss-style Brexit, or EU deal, I should say, really, basically means still paying into EU coffers, agreeing to the Schengen free travel area and accepting EU rules and regs. So some would argue it's being in the European Union, really, anyway. And do the public support England's footballers taking the knee at the World Cup? Well, now, am I allowed to say I don't quite trust the GB News' very own People's poll? I'm not allowed to say that. It's absolutely kosher. 40% of voters apparently support England's players taking the knee, while 23% oppose it. Good grief. Anyway, joining me now to discuss some of these findings is our very own Olivia Utley, GB News' political reporter. Let's talk about British jobs for British workers. Olivia, the idea now that companies need to start training more Brits as opposed to just maybe looking to import, dare I say it, cheaper foreign labour. Would it actually cost companies more? Is that why we're seeing them not doing it?
Well, it might cost companies more, but the problem with the idea of importing cheaper foreign labour is that it isn't really working. We've got these immigration statistics out this week showing that there are, 1 million new immigrants to the UK, figures higher than we've seen since in all post-war time. But they're not filling the vacancies. We've got a million people coming over and over 1 million vacancies.
Now, just on this, sorry to interrupt, but I'm really keen to drill down in this, because is this because we don't have a good enough points-based immigration system, so we're getting a lot of, immigrant workers in, but dare I say it, are they lower end?
Well, the problem seems to be not so much that they're lower end in terms of skills, it's that the vast majority of new immigrants that we're seeing here now are immigrant students who are allowed to bring over up to 4 members of their family. So, for example, I think you've got 50,000 Nigerian students plus over 50,000 members of their family, so more than one family member per Nigerian student. So the points-based immigration system, there is a good argument that it's not working that well, because the dependent of a Nigerian student...
But also, I'm sorry about this, I don't understand how this works, because like when I was at university, no one could be dependent on me because I was absolutely, completely, utterly skint and also a total mess. But, seriously, how on earth can students claim that they've got dependents and then bring them over? This is just a backdoor into Britain, isn't it?
Well, there is an argument that, which Rishi Sunak is addressing now, that there is an argument that this student thing has become a loophole in the immigration system. So you've got people coming over to Britain as students, but doing sort of Mickey Mouse degrees where you don't actually have to be at university very much, and just using the degree as an excuse to bring in members of their family who are then going into work, and often in the... not in legal routes.
The black economy, or whatever you call it, yes.
So that is an argument, and Rishi Sunak is trying to deal with that. One way that he's talking about dealing with that is only allowing foreign students over if they're going to one of Britain's elite universities, or cracking down on the number of people who a foreign student can bring over, because at the moment it's 4 people, which some people consider quite a lot. But that seems to be the problem with the immigration issue. It's not that workers are coming into Britain to fill skills gaps, it's that you've got the families of students.
Those students, oh gosh, and the ones we're producing here, they're all rabid trots as well, aren't they? The student body is an absolute nightmare. Olivia, thank you very much. Olivia Utley there, political correspondent, who has rather thankfully opened the door for the student visa discussion. With me now is Philip Blond, director of Res Publica and former advisor to David Cameron. Thank you very much, Philip. Great to have you on the show. Right, student visas. I'm sticking with this. Because we had those quite surprising net migration figures. Yes, I know they were inflated when it comes to taking in Ukrainian refugees and Afghan and Hong Kongers as well. But the fact is that was it David Cameron's pledge for tens of thousands? I mean, that was absolute rubbish. And the students now are taking the mickey, aren't they?
Well, everyone's taking the mickey. I mean, what the story has been is nobody has been able to control migration. Brexit voters voted for control at our borders. We've depressed the number of EU migrants, and we've dramatically increased the number of non-EU. So we're getting a far higher number of rest of the world while depressing European migrants. So the system has become completely dysfunctional, and we've become reliant upon kind of mass, cheap migrant labour. So you had the chairman of Next arguing that he desperately needs migrant labour, and it turns out that Next pay less in the retail sector than other comparable stores. So this model is deeply broken, but we haven't found a way to fix it.
But this is the thing. Can I just ask you a question on this? Because I find this staggering. So Brexit was a quote-unquote racist vote, despite the fact that essentially it would mean less immigration from predominantly white Europeans, more immigration from ethnic minorities abroad, which by the way, I refuse to believe that people didn't know when they voted for Brexit, because that is obvious, right? So there's that. Then you've got the fact that got record levels of illegal immigration, record levels of net migration. We've got an ethnic minority Prime Minister and an ethnic minority Home Secretary. We're quite clearly not a racist nation. But when you say it's in such a mess, I firmly believe that the main reason we're not clamping down on things like student visas and the fact that we're being taken for a ride is because we don't want to appear racist by getting tough on immigration.
I don't think it's that. I think that what it is that we have government failure across the board, from the police to the health service, and guess what, at the border as well. What we have is a growth model that for the British universities that are one of our few world leading sectors. We attract in the world's best students, and we want many of the world's best students to stay because they help propel British innovation and British growth. If you look at America, one of the reasons why America has such a high level of growth is it constantly captures the best minds in the world on a consistent basis. And you could argue that that's one of the few things we still do well with our university sector. The problem with with migration lies more in the fact that we don't do anything for our indigenous population in terms of skills and education. We have no real transformative agenda to distribute.
We've got nowhere for them to live.
Upskilling.
We've got nowhere for them to live. We've got nowhere for them to send their kids to school. We've got nowhere for them to go to the doctors and all of this stuff. This is one thing I cannot get my head around, Philip, at all, is the total lack of planning and preparation. Dare I say it, you know, certainly not started by David Cameron, and certainly I would imagine you would never have advised him to create this absolute mess that we find ourselves in now. But how on earth can we continue down this route of mass migration and doing absolutely naff all with our infrastructure?
Well, we can't, is the obvious point. I mean, what we need to change are the rules and regulations that prevent us from clamping down successfully on illegal migration. We have an unregulated labour market that is highly attractive to economic migrants, and most of the people crossing the channel are young, fit men from places like Albania who are fleeing economic poverty.
Yeah.
And so what we need to do, we have a labour market that is very unregulated so that they can work very easily. So we have to kind of look at the whole system of pull and why we're attracting people, because they go through France.
Well, it made me laugh, Philip. It made me laugh, Philip, that there was a report out by the Home Office to say creating a hostile environment for illegal immigrants doesn't work. Well, we wouldn't know, because we've not created a hostile environment for it, have they? We've said, come over here, you can work in the drugs trade, you probably buy yourself a house and a Lamborghini as well.
Well, the evidence is a little different. The evidence shows that actually migrants produce less claim on the welfare state than indigenous claimants. They produce more growth and more innovation. The real key, and I repeat this, is we have abandoned our own people. We do not skill them, we do not educate them, we do not visit them. We don't have...
And we teach them to hate this country.
I'll just finish this, if I may.
Correctly.
If you don't skill your own people, and if your own people can't fill the jobs for a variety of factors, then of course you're going to have pull factors that pull people in from across the globe. What we have and what we need is an at-scale revolution in adult education for people out of work and for people in work, so that they can be skilled for the jobs that don't exist yet. And the government has a Skills Act, which was one of the very few outstanding bits of legislation, but it's based on a loan. It's asking people to take out a loan to educate themselves, and we don't have a national careers services. Businesses don't know what they need to educate their people in. So we're in a skills crisis, and that is one of the drivers behind the migrant crisis.
Good stuff. Philip, thank you very, very much. Philip Blonde there, Director of Res Publica, former advisor to David Cameron. Right, you are with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Coming up, shall we reduce the number of foreign students we allow into this country? It's a possible government plan to try to curb record immigration levels. But is that the biggest problem? It's certainly one of them, because you can come over here, get a Mickey Mouse degree and bring the whole family over as well. First, though, it's time for a short break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you know, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky. That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Welcome back, you wonderful lot. Right, loads of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts on strikes. So gbviews@gbnews.uk is that email address, and we will read some of them out. Faye says, as a nurse who thinks we are not badly paid now, we were in the 70s when I started, it is clear there is an orchestrated attempt by the union chiefs to bring down the government. Keir Starmer will say anything to get into power. If we think things are bad now, just wait until Labour get in. Love your programme. And the fact that you asked the hard questions. Good stuff, Faye. Thank you very much. Yes, indeed. And it's an issue that I think is very genuine, which is actually this general strike, potential for a general strike, and things like the nurses' strike. Is this now less about the workers' rise, setting, I would argue, laughably ridiculous demands? 19% pay rise for nurses. Bonkers. Madness in a cost of living crisis. At the same time as rail strikes, Mick Lynch there not telling us exactly what he wants, by the way. Rumour has it anyway that it's way above inflation there as well. You've got potentially teachers on the go. We've definitely got teachers in Scotland. Scottish teachers are about to do rolling strike. You won't hear Queen Nick talking about that, will you, as she's desperately trying to drag them out of the United Kingdom. But yes, Scottish teachers are striking. You're looking at all of this now and you're thinking, hang on a minute, is this actually less about the workers' rights and more about doing everything they can to bring down a government? I can't help but think it is. Thank you very much, Faye, for that wonderful email. Sarah says, I'm a nurse of many years, ward nurse on night duty, night manager, ITU trained, it goes over my head that, I'm afraid, and ED advanced nurse practitioner. I will strike for the junior staff on the wards who have come into a professional and regulated job who can't pay their bills, do extra shifts, staff hours after being paid to nurse the patients. I always tell people I wish I could take you on one night duty and see what I do. I actually really want to do, genuinely, I really want to do this because I know that I give it quite large about the idea that my colours are firmly nailed to the mast. I don't think nurses should strike. I think it's morally unconscionable for nurses to strike, and I appreciate that you and I differ on this, the wonderful person who's just emailed in. But my take on it is, I'll say it again, nurses, tremendous job, literally save lives, and at times it must be a grim job. And yeah, I don't think, they're certainly not rich, are they? There's no question of that. However, 19% pay rise in the middle of a cost of living crisis, having had 2 pay rises in 2 years, I think is a bit of a whopper. I think it's a bit rum, really, frankly, if you ask me. And if you go on strike and people die, which they will, 30,000 routine operations not going to take place, supposedly anyway, people on dialysis and chemotherapy, people will suffer as a result. I find that a bit squiffy, personally. But I would love to come on a night duty because, hey, I've not walked a mile in a nurse's shoes, have I? Ian says, this is just not on. Thank you, Ian, in a way. They do a good job, but frankly, supermarket workers have worked during the pandemic and had to suck it up. Yeah, now, I agree with you on this one, to a point, because supermarket workers did not have to, you know, drag elderly people into wards and resuscitate them. But I do take your point in principle. Why do nurses deserve special treatment? It's an interesting one again, this, Ian. I'm glad you raised it, because this is why it's such a fascinating topic for me. Because, OK, it's not as simple as, oh, we went outside and clapped every, what was it, Tuesday or Thursday for the nurses. I'm sure they appreciated that, but that realistically meant nothing. And by the way, I'm not sure anyone would do it now. For me, it's more the fact that we did actually lock our country down to protect the NHS. And yes, they were massively stretched, and yes, there are issues with PPE, and it must have been horrific. And I am not saying that their job was easy whatsoever. But has the British taxpayer not already paid the price for lockdowns and for the work that nurses did during lockdowns. People lost their businesses, people are still paying off furlough, people are still paying off self-employment, business allowance or whatever it is. People are still paying off the fact that, you know, they were shackled inside to Chris Whitty's basement radiator for however long, weren't they? And is that now not enough of a sacrifice? Do we have to go delving into our pockets, delving into what's left of the child remains of our wallets in a cost of living crisis and whack it up to 19%? I don't know. Your views, keep them coming in. gbviews at gbnews.uk. But get a load of this. It's not just the nurses, no. It's the GPs as well. GPs have voted to demand a new contract from the government. Get a load of this. They want to reduce their core contract working hours to a regular 9-to-5 job. Get another job then. Just get another job. And they want to end the new extended hours contract, which means they work Saturdays and weekday evenings until 8 p.m. So a little bit of a mishmash. But the British Medical Association say that the current hours indirectly discriminate against GPs who wish to have families, mostly affecting female GPs. Classic, isn't it? Classic. You see a problem, go down the old HR sexism angle, isn't it? This is it. So, because female GPs, which, by the way, in a modern world, I'm not sure why having a family only affects women, but there we go. Female GPs want to get home to the kids, and so GP surgeries now need to close at 5 p.m. It's all very well and good. I understand. I would hate to see anyone discriminated in any workforce whatsoever, but the reality is we cannot now change law when it comes to public health because female GPs want to get home in time to pick the kids up from school. The chairperson at the BMA said that GPs should prepare to strike if necessary, arguing that too many GPs are refusing permanent roles to try to balance their family life. Get another job. Anyway, joining me now is Dr. Lawrence Gurlis, the CEO of Same Day Doctor. Dr. Lawrence, thank you very much.
Hi. Hi, Patrick.
The average salary, from what I can gather, of a GP is around £112,000 per year.
Yeah.
Nobody really works your average 9 to... Very few people really work your average 9 to 5 now. Why should GPs be any different?
Yeah, I think the GP should read the room. I think now is not the time to be saying we're going to be working less. Look, the BMA is a trade union. It's nothing more than that. And this is a negotiating tactic that's not been agreed by NHS England. They're going to go to NHS England and say, can we move our contract, instead of working 8 a.m. to 6:30, 5 days a week, can we change it to 9 to 5? But now is not the time to do that. The GPs will say that during October they did 32 million consultations, and that's a lot. And some of them are working very hard. But as you pointed out, very few doctors are full-timers anyway. Most of them work 3 or 4 days a week. They have plenty of time for family life. Yes. The doctors who, if the contract's 8 a.m. to 6:30, right, that doesn't have to be one doctor working throughout that entire shift.
Can I just say, can I ask, if, as indeed it is being reported widely, that one of the major reasons why they want to work a steady, stable 9 to 5 is because they think the current arrangement discriminates against women who have families. We need to go on a male GP recruiting drive, don't we, then?
Well, this was... Look, I don't want to go down this route because, as you say, there is sexism, but this was always the risk. More than half of GPs now are women, and wrongly, I agree with you, that the burden of family life falls on the female GPs. I don't see why men shouldn't share that. But most GPs are not full-timers. And actually, look, I'm going to be working tomorrow, Saturday, whereas GPs don't have to. They don't have to work Saturdays and Sundays. They have the weekend for family life. And as you say, they're well paid compared with the nurses, compared with junior doctors in hospital.
Oh, exactly.
I've got a colleague who's
just
a
on
junior
this, sorry,
doctor.
because I've covered the nurses' strike quite extensively, as you'll be well aware, and it's often quite difficult to get nurses on. I mean, quite often end up getting a GP on, and a lot of those GPs go, I side with the nurses. Yes, isn't it absolutely terrible? But then you've got to look at this and you go, well, GPs didn't want to be named and shamed when it comes to the amount of face-to-face appointments that they did. Shock horror, when the government said that they were going to start naming and shaming, then the number of face-to-face appointments went up. Now they only want to do a 9 to 5. They probably want a pay rise as well, for goodness sake. One of the reasons why they don't do overtime, and now this is where I do have some sympathy for them, is because then a lot of the time they'll go into a higher tax bracket if they work overtime, and so they'll get absolutely rinsed, so it's no financial incentive. But I can't help but wonder, I'm looking at this now, Dr. Lawrence, and I think there is a psychological problem with a lot of GPs in this country. They are going into it for the money and for a cushy life and not to make people better. Is that unfair?
I think that's perfectly fair. I think we've become a profession who moan a lot. I've been saying about the doctors recently, stop moaning. If you don't like it, you should change things. We can't rely on the government to change the model. Look, let me go back to that figure of 32 million consultations in October. That's half the population of this country saw a doctor in October. Now, to me, no one's looked at the demand. Some of the demand is appropriate, some of it is inappropriate, and some of it is, frankly, abuse of the system. And I would look at the demand side and say, can we please control demand? And the doctors, instead of moaning and saying more money, underfunding, fewer hours, can the doctors look at a way of improving the health service for everyone, for the poor, for the rich, for everyone?
Can I ask you to essentially plan my next interview for me on this? Because when I next get a GP on who is of a different bent to you, so they are completely full swing behind this, they will no doubt say certain things to me like, the hours are too long, we haven't got enough staff. They'll probably blame the Tories for, chronic underfunding. Can you just imagine I am a GP saying all of that usual stuff now? What do I say to them?
Well, I think you should say that the GP should work full-time. There's no reason why you shouldn't work full-time and do extra hours. You don't have to do nights anymore. When I was an NHS GP, I had 24-hour responsibility 7 days a week. I was getting in my car in the middle of the night and driving around seeing people. I don't see what's wrong with that anymore. I don't see why people can't work hard, especially the younger GPs. And I think you should say that. I think you should point out that most GPs work 3 or 4 days a week. They then do other work, whether it's in the private sector or doing something else. I just don't think they're putting the hours in. And to now say they're reducing the hours, it just doesn't work.
OK, Dr Lawrence, thank you very much, as ever. Dr Lawrence Gurley, the CEO of Same Day Doctor. Right, we're moving on, people. Got to keep the tempo up here because the government has signalled that it could bar foreign students from Britain unless they win a place at a top UK university. Essentially, it's a desire, as far as I can tell anyway, to stop the big foreign student immigration con that appears to be taking place. All foreign students could also be banned from bringing family members with them. Note, that's the con. And the number of dependents as well, because that absolutely tripled in the last year, which is shocking, isn't it? But with many smaller universities dependent on the supply of foreign students, can we afford to prioritise British students at the expense of those from abroad? With me now is Shoaib Khan, a human rights lawyer, and Alp Mehmet, chairman of Migration Watch. Thank you very, very much. Shoaib, I will start with you. So as it currently stands, if I am a student from, say, Nigeria or wherever, and I get into, I don't know, Thicko's University in Idiotsville to study underwater basket weaving, I can bring 4 dependents with me, can I?
Well, it depends on the course, it depends on the level of the course, it depends on the degree and university. Not all students can, but many undergraduate, postgraduate, doctoral students can bring their wives and children with them, yes.
OK, and Alp, what's the crack when it comes to them staying after once the student has finished a completely bogus course?
Well, it's not only bogus courses, let's be clear about that, but anyone who completes a course here at a university degree can stay on for 2 years to work. Not to work in anywhere in particular, but any job at all. The vast majority do. In theory, those who come here, undertake courses, complete them, should be leaving and going back very often to countries where their skills and education are needed a great deal more than even we need them. That doesn't happen. We heard not so long ago that 97% of them do leave. In fact, they don't. And in the latest figures, we saw that of those who completed their studies and finished in 2019, the academic year, the end of 2019, 61% of them actually left. 40% of them still here. In addition to that, we have people coming from any number of universities, 50 universities from around the world, particular universities, who can come here and arrive, do any job without any question. That's daft, frankly.
Yeah, OK, Shoaib, I'll throw it back to you. You are a human rights lawyer. Would I have a case if I was one of these students to say, well, you know, you've just changed the rules. What do you define as a top university? You know, do I have the natural human right to come and study in Britain?
I mean, I don't think you would have a natural human right, no. But I think, I mean, that's just, you know, morally, financially, socially, culturally, that's just a good thing to do. I mean, so many of our, you know, members of the current cabinet, our prime minister, studied abroad. That's where Rishi Sunak met his wife. He was studying in the US. He was an overseas student. And I think that's the thing, that's what we have to understand. I mean, obviously the Tory government, you know the price of everything, the value of nothing. So the point is, it's not just about the money these people bring, but secondly, they do. I mean, just a study last year showed a net profit of, I think it was 28 billion that foreign students bring every year to the UK. And so for all of these reasons, and also, like you said, what's a top university? I know for the government and so many of our elite,
That'd be Russell,
you know,
probably, won't it?
either go to Oxford or Cambridge, or there's no point going to university. But obviously that's not true for the vast majority of us.
No.
And just like any British person can choose to go to any university, any course. So we should allow that to the others as well, who are spending a lot of, I mean, obviously our fees are one of the highest in the world.
Yeah, OK, just very quickly, thank you very much for that, Alp. I'll give just the final word over to you now. There is an element, isn't there, about soft power for Britain, the idea that we welcome in a load of people who are students, they spend a few years of their life here, they like the place, and it makes us look good on the world stage. And it props up smaller universities who otherwise will go bust.
All that, I agree with all that, and I spent years championing this country for overseas students to come here. But the fact is that many of them do come here and use it as a route to migrate and stay in this country. That is not what should be happening. We also opened up our university sector 20, 30 years ago. We doubled it effectively. And there are a lot of universities now who are not top-notch, to say the least, who are bringing people in, are totally dependent on overseas students. That has to end as well.
Both of you, thank you very, very much. Shoaib Khan there, human rights lawyer, and Al Mehmet, chairman of Migration Watch UK, just reacting to those pretty stunning net migration figures. A lot of it driven, apparently, by student visas. Did you know that if you come over here, you can essentially bring 4 dependents, believe it or not? I mean, can you, are there any students you know capable of really having dependents? I mean, I was absolutely skint at university, but there we go. You're with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Please don't go anywhere, because there's loads more to come as we approach the final hour of this programme, the business end. We're building up to England taking the next step to bring it on home. We are talking more about those net migration figures. GPs, they only want to work 9 to 5, apparently. Is that right? And strikes. I'll see you in a tick.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hello everybody, it's just gone 5 p.m. You're with me, Patrick Christys, here on GB News, and here's what's coming up in the programme. So, just 2 hours to go now until England's second group game against the United States of America. Following that 6-2 thrashing of the Iranian pub team, it's clearly going to be a tougher test, though, against tonight's opponents, but they remain firm favourites and should see themselves qualify for the last 16. We will be going to Doha. We'll probably be going to a series of pubs up and down the country as well. So make sure you stay tuned for all of the big build-up right here on GB News. Not just football, though, in the final hour, because we will be reviewing our latest GB News People's Poll, which has got 60% of you saying that you want to prioritise British workers rather than embracing endless mass immigration. This is off the back of record levels of net migration. We just had a big chat, didn't we, about student visas and apparently how that is just a backdoor into Britain, basically. You can bring your dependents, bring whoever you like, come over and study underwater basket weaving at Ficksville University, and you can bring whoever you like with you. Anyway, we're going to be going to polling legend Sir John Curtis to pick apart our People's Poll, and we will also be discussing the latest in the Shamima Begum hearing. Should she be allowed to return back to the UK? What do you think? That hearing draws to a close today. I want to hear from you at home. Send me your thoughts. Big questions I've been asking throughout the course of the show, and I'm going to continue to do it throughout this hour as well, because we've got all of those topics, plus this one. Nurses' strikes. Do you back a nurses' strike? 2 big dates announced there, the 15th and the 20th of December. And GPs. Yes, they only want to work 9 to 5 now, apparently. Who'd have thunk it? Your views on that. GB Views at gbnews.uk. But before all of that, it's your latest headlines.
Patrick, thank you. Good afternoon. It's 3 minutes past 5. I'm Bethany Elsey in the GB newsroom. The government is refusing to back down over nurses' pay demands ahead of their first national strike in over a century. Staff in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will walk out for 2 days on the 15th and 20th of December. The Royal College of Nursing accused the government of rejecting formal talks as an alternative to industrial action. But Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says what the union is asking for is simply unaffordable.
Look, I have enormous respect and gratitude to our nurses, as everyone does, for the incredible job they do. And look, I know things are difficult right now for everyone because of what's happening with inflation. And that's why our plans that we outlined last week will get a grip of inflation and bring it down. That's really important. And in the meantime, what the unions are asking for, I think, is a 19% pay rise, and I think most people watching will recognise that that's obviously unaffordable, and that's why I'm pleased that the Health Secretary is sitting down, talking to the union, and hopefully we can find a way through this.
Well, the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, says the government is shirking its responsibilities.
Nurses have been driven to this by the government, and that's a badge of shame for the government. They've never taken strike action before. And for patients, this is going to be devastating news. Nurses don't want to go on strike.
Meanwhile, teachers in Scotland will strike for a further 16 days next year over a pay dispute. The Educational Institute of Scotland says the consecutive days of action split across every council in the country will happen in January and February. It's after yesterday's strike closed nearly all primary and secondary schools. And some news just in the last half an hour. Levelling Up Minister Deanna Davison has announced that she will stand down at the next election. The 29-year-old became Bishop Auckland's first ever Conservative MP in 2019. In a statement, Miss Davison said her role as an MP meant she had not been able to live anything like a normal life. She's now the 7th Tory MP to indicate they will not seek re-election next time round. The government says the bullying investigation into the Deputy Prime Minister has been expanded. Downing Street confirmed a 3rd formal complaint has now been lodged against Dominic Raab. He denies any wrongdoing and says his behaviour is always professional. A former soldier has been convicted of killing a man more than 30 years ago at an army checkpoint in Northern Ireland. 53-year-old David Jonathan Holden was found guilty of the manslaughter of Aidan McAspenny in County Tyrone in 1988. Holden admitted firing the shot that killed him, but claimed it was an accident. Paul Young is the national spokesman for the Northern Ireland Veterans Movement. He says they'll appeal the verdict.
Veterans, I can say, will be deeply disappointed by this verdict. I'm saddened by it, but it's not over for David yet, because his team are, as far as I'm aware, are going to appeal the decision, and I think eventually, if necessary, go to the Supreme Court.
The Foreign Secretary has announced a package of hands-on support to help Ukraine through the winter. The country is experiencing power blackouts for a third day after Russian airstrikes hit key infrastructure. During his first official trip to Kyiv, James Cleverly pledged to send 35 more emergency vehicles, as well as a further £3 million to help rebuild the country.
Ultimately, I think it's incredibly important that the UK demonstrates to the Ukrainian people, who are bearing the brunt of this brutality from Russia, that we are standing shoulder to shoulder with them through our military support, through our humanitarian support, through our economic support, but also through the visible support.
And Wales's World Cup hopes hang by a thread after their last-minute defeat to Iran. 2-0 was the final score. Both goals conceded late in stoppage time after Wales were reduced to 10 men after their keeper was sent off with just 5 minutes left. The result leaves them bottom of Group B with only one game to play against England. And tonight, England will play against the USA, and they're chasing 3 points to secure a place in the knockout stages. You're up to date on GB News. We bring you more news as it happens. Now, let's get back to Patrick.
Welcome back, people. I'm getting very excited, not just because the England game is now just a couple of hours away, but because I've just been told that we have got the best manager that England never had, teed up and ready to go. Neil Warnock is going to be joining me very, very shortly. I love this guy. His half-time rants and team talks are the stuff of legend. I'm gonna get Neil on very, very shortly. But before all of that, England are, of course, going to be taking on the United States in Doha. Now, there have been fears earlier on that Harry Kane would miss tonight's game because of an injury, but that's all right. And apparently, the England manager, Gareth Southgate, will potentially be keeping the same starting 11 from the 6-2 thrashing of pub team Iran. And just a reminder that Wales lost 2-0 to, you know, that team I've just mentioned there earlier on. Sorry for Wales, but now England can hopefully biff the Americans, and bish, bash, bosh, we're pretty much out of the group. Right, so we go live now to Doha, where GB News' reporter Paul Hawkins joins us. Oh, where's the souk? He's not in the souk. Where are you?
I know, for Souk's sake. I mean, look, we're basically in a kind of downtown equivalent of Canary Wharf. It's called Musharraf, so it's kind of like a bit of a swankier area, you know, in a different way. And this is kind of FIFA's area for celebrating South American football. So you might recognise the man over here that people are having their picture taken with, the late, great Maradona there, holding the World Cup. And actually, just behind him, the trophy that England lifted in 1966. I think that's the actual trophy in the cabinet just behind, the Jules Rimet trophy. So people having their picture taken with Maradona. And then just over here, there he is, the man with the most goals ever in the history of football, Pelé there, actually holding the Jules Rimet trophy as well. So this is kind of an area where you can see memorabilia, have your picture taken with the stars, as it were. There's also kind of an interactive element as well. If you just follow me this way, we were showing some of our GB News viewers this the other day. You can also test yourselves with various skills. I know you'd like this, Patrick. You can line up here, and you can basically blast the ball as hard as you can, like this gentleman is doing, and then it's got the kilometres an hour, 80 up there on the board. 80 kilometres it says there. So about 100, 120 is the record for that. So there's loads of things to get stuck into here in Doha. A little round of applause there for him. Very good. Yeah, very good. 87 miles an hour. So that gives you an idea of the kind of thing that's going on in Doha. But let's turn our attention to the results, or at least the football that's going on at the moment. The Netherlands currently beating Ecuador 1-0. Earlier, Qatar managed to score a goal, but they lost 3-1 to Senegal. And before that, Wales beaten 2-0 by Iran. The Iranians getting 2 goals late into stoppage time. The Welsh not really at the races, to be honest, and it now looks really difficult for them to qualify for the second round. They need England and the USA to draw this evening, and then they need to go and beat England next Tuesday. So we've been talking about the England-USA game, which kicks off in just under 2 hours' time. This is what the English and the American fans have been telling us.
It'll be a tough one with England, but it's going to be exciting. The team's young, full of energy, and we have so many Americans come in Qatar supporting. So.
And we're just the USA.
Yeah.
We're just good. We're just going to win it easy, go through, go all the way, take the cup home. That's what you're here for.
I think Harry Kane's got to go on this sheet, isn't he? He's got to go on the score sheet. Harry Kane, Saka's playing back good, isn't he? Saka's good.
No. Mexico and England will beat the USA 4-0.
Yeah! England!
There you go. So, England taking on the USA this evening. It's going to be more of a test for Gareth Southgate's men than Iran, but a win will take them through to the second round. And, credit to Iran, they were much better than the Welsh earlier today. A lot of Welsh fans saying that they deserved to win. And if the results go their way, they will qualify for the second round for the first time in their history. And just one other bit of news, because everyone cares about Brazil. Neymar, Brazil's top man, out for the next 2 games with an ankle injury. And we've just moved around to another part of this area. This is the kind of place where you can, look, you have to get it in the bin there, and then you have to hit the wall, and you get various points for it, and then they tot it up over here. So, you get 5 balls for 30 seconds. As this lad's about to have a go himself. So we'll leave you with that, Patrick.
Good stuff, Paul. Thank you very much, as ever, Paul Hawkins. There are our man in Doha. Good stuff, Paul. Yes, right. Well, I understand that we can actually see some live images now of England fans getting ready for the build-up of the game. England taking on USA. Yes, well, let's be honest, that's just people, isn't it? But there we go. I'm reliably informed that some of those are indeed English and are there to supporting that. I can see a couple of England shirts there. There's a flag of a different nation. Fantastic stuff. Did anybody else find it absolutely hilarious that the 2 chaps who were dressed as Crusaders got banned entry from a particular game? I mean, the optics of that are terrible in the Middle East, but there we are. Right, OK, so we are going now. Yes, get in. I've been looking forward to this for a very, very long time. I'm speaking to former football manager, national treasure, absolute out-and-out legend, the best manager that England never had. It's the one, it's the only, it's Mr Neil Warnock. Yes, Neil, good stuff. How are you, first and foremost? Are you ready to see England take the next step to definitely this time bringing it home against the Americans?
Well, I think so. It'll be a tough game today. The last twice they've played them, they haven't beat them. So you know what Americans are like. They're so confident. It's a little bit like when we used to play Australia at cricket. You just want to bash them and beat them, really. And the Americans are the same at football now. So I'm hoping that the lads can turn them over.
Yeah, exactly. We do have a rivalry there, and yes, the history is against us, but it's probably the only time America can say they've got better history than us, isn't it, when it comes to this? But what kind of team do you hope that Gareth Southgate picks today? Do you think he could afford to even rest a couple of players or not, go full throttle?
No, I don't think he can. I think, the criticism that he'll get if things go wrong, I think it's enough to beat him with a full team. So I think he'll go full team. Might make one change. I don't know if there's any knocks anywhere. But it's the team, I think, that he should have picked it. He did it, and I think well done to him, really.
Yeah, got a bit more attacking, a bit less conservative perhaps in it. But you would know about high-pressure situations, about it's not quite knockout football yet, is it? But the World Cup, obviously, ultimately a knockout tournament. Have you seen a shift in mentality with the England players? Because, look, when I was growing up and I was younger, despite the fact that we had the golden generation, a lot of it was a very hard watch, Neil, and it looked like they bottled it on the big stage. Not so much now.
I used to watch Coronation Street instead of watching England play. Honestly, I used to dread England playing. And I think the last few years, Gareth's done really well because he's got a young group who want to listen to him on every word he says, and he motivates. So he hasn't got a Ronaldo or somebody that's going to, be hard to judge. So, and the games, the last 5 games that we played, the friendly games, that whatever they call it, Nations League. Absolutely pathetic. You know, it's like a pre-season friendly. You don't want to play them as a manager. You want to get into this real McCoy stuff, and that's why I'm not surprised about the first game. Today it'll be a little bit more difficult breaking them down, because I think defensive-wise they're better than what the Iranians were. So it'll be interesting to see if we can start on that front foot and have a go at them.
Yeah, indeed. Lots of exciting young talent, less of a reliance on the idea of Harry Kane, because I know a lot of people, when that squad was announced, I mean, I was one of them, I thought, Harry Kane, undoubtedly a great of the game. And then you look behind him, Marcus Rashford. Some people might argue his focus a little bit more on politics than football in recent years, which as a Manchester United fan I've not been best pleased about, but he's entitled to do whatever he wants to do. Callum Wilson had a great season, all right, fair enough, but you're looking at that front line and you're thinking, well, you know, if Harry Kane goes, are we in a bit of trouble? But you have got some great players in behind him, haven't you? The likes of Saka, we can score, Jude Bellingham, we can score goals from various different positions, can't we?
I don't think it's scoring goals that's going to be the problem. I think it's when we get to better opposition, I think it'll be defending them. I still, you know, I think Harry Maguire's done well, but I don't like at times when we let the opposition break quick at us. So we have to score goals. I think Clough used to say, you know, let's score more goals than the opponents, and I think that's what we've got to do. We've got to go into it. And in this game in particular, it wouldn't worry me if Wilson played. I think Wilson's been outstanding this season, and he's the only one that goes beyond. Ivan Toney wouldn't have gone beyond. So I think that's a good decision with Wilson. The other young lads, I mean, I in my lifetime, I can see Bellingham being the best midfield player that I've ever seen. So the way that he is now, the coolness, is like an old head. You know, at such a young age, I've been really impressed with him. And Declan Rice, great, you know, nice and steady. So I think we've got the makings, mate. I think if we can get the points today, it'll be great to give the likes of Foden and Grealish and one or two others a game against Wales. You know, I think it'll be just to give them some minutes, just in case they're needed in the latter parts.
You mentioned Jude Bellingham there. I think he's only just 19, isn't he? I believe they retired his shirt number at Birmingham when he went to Dortmund. Again, as a United fan, that was a crushing blow, by the way, but I've become very used to that in recent years. But you think he's got the potential to be the best midfielder you've ever seen? You've seen some absolute greats, and with respect, you had a 42-year-long managerial career, I believe. So basically, you've seen everyone. I'm reading between the lines there. Neil, are you saying you think he could be the best midfielder the world's ever seen?
I just think he's got everything in his locker. He's got coolness under pressure. He can pick a pass out. He breaks the game up well with tackles. He scored. I mean, the header. People just said it was a decent goal, but when you look at it from my point of view, I thought it was an unbelievable header. The ball's coming behind him, and he directs it to the left of the keeper. I didn't think he got enough credit for the header. So I think he's got everything that you need to become a top-class, world-class player. And we're lucky to have him now. And at the same time, when you look at Foden and Saka and people like that, you know, I think it's an exciting time. We just seem to be short of centre-halves at the minute, that's all.
Well, look, I think Harry Maguire gets a lot of stick, because he does, and, you know, I don't really want to drag it up there. I believed he was at Sheffield United for a bit, wasn't he? And I know you were. I won't drag you down that route, because everything that has been said about Harry Maguire, really, we don't need to necessarily drag down there. But, Neil, do you mind if I just put you on the spot a little bit? Because I am being serious now. I interview a lot of people, you know, every single day on this channel, mostly, unfortunately, politicians. I think you should potentially run for number 10, because you definitely have my vote. But
you didn't see my cabinet then when I picked a cabinet, did you?
I can see a cabinet behind you right now, and it's full of booze, and I love it. But seriously though, one of the things that I do depressingly often is to watch some of your team talks from back in the day. You've got to dive for 3 points. Look. Can I just ask you quickly, if you're in that dressing room tonight, right, and it's England there, we're at the World Cup, we're playing America, the weight of expectation is on the lads. Come on, Neil, what are you saying? Get them pumped up.
I just think it's the same. It's not quite as, you know, I mean, I said things like that, which incidentally is the name of my podcast now. But anyway, it died for 3 points. The quality of the players, I've never had quality like that. I'm not being disrespectful to the players I've had. But these lads, they need reminding before they go out and how good they are. That's what they need, to go out with the confidence on that front foot, win your first tackle, win your first header, do the rest will take care of itself. If we compete with them in the physical side, we will beat them. And I think that's just what Gareth will be doing, just reminding them of all the good points that they've got. The training's finished. Now it's all in the mind now. And let's get on that front foot like they did against Iran and keep on the front foot, because, they will go under if we can get on that front foot and keep them in there.
Oh, good lad. Neil, look, thank you very, very much. Neil Warnock there. What an absolute legend. Yes, thank you so, so much. Former football manager, legend of the game. Some would argue maybe the best manager England never had. Neil Warnock there, picking the bones out of England's build-up tonight to our game against the USA in Qatar. But as the anticipation of this huge Three Lions match tonight grows, let's cross to Sherborne in Elmet, you heard, where GB News' Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley is in a pub with some England fans, and we're getting closer to kick-off now. When I first came to you, it was quite quiet, but I can already hear a dull hum behind you now. It's kicking off, is it?
It definitely is, yes. The pub is filling up. They're watching the current match that's on now, Netherlands and Ecuador, getting excited for that England-USA game this evening. There's a lot of faith in the England team from the people that I've been speaking to. A lot of people have been predicting at least 3 or 4 goals for England and either none for the USA or at least 1 goal, but definitely people are saying England are going to win this game, and the message that they're saying is football's coming home. There's a lot of support for the team and a lot of excitement for that 7 o'clock kick-off.
Anna, thank you very, very much. Great to have you there out in amongst it for us. I imagine that we'll be thrown to you quite regularly throughout the course of this evening as we build up to England against America. Yes. Big game, big game. Your predictions, please, people. But, OK, right, we've done the football now. We've done it for a bit. I'll give you a break from the footy. I want to talk a bit more news stuff, because we've got a GB News People's Poll out. That's right. We're going to be talking about the fact that, well, shock horror, the vast majority of you, 60% of you apparently, think that we need to be relying more on British workers and training British workers up as opposed to relying on cheap foreign labour. I'm also going to be asking you what you make of the fact that nurses are due to go on strike. 2 dates announced there. Again, shock horror. It's at maximum time to cause maximum damage. And GPs, get a load of this. You've been trying to get a GP appointment for a while? Well, good luck getting one after 5 p.m, because they now want a 9 to 5 GP service. Why, you may ask? Well, because anything more will discriminate against women who want a family. Good grief. Are we a first world country or not? Stay with me, Patrick Christys. I'll be live with you all the way through until 6 p.m. Now, it's your weather.
Hello, it's Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Next week is looking drier than this week, but for the weekend, we've got another bout of wet and windy weather on the way. It will turn things a bit milder briefly before the drier weather next week turns things colder. For the time being, our weather is coming from the west. Now, we've seen this ridge of high pressure affecting many of us on Friday. That's led to a fine day with a break in between weather systems, but there is still some rain around during the evening, some showers for western areas, some longer spells of rain for the northwest of Scotland. Otherwise, clear spells for many, especially during the first part of the night, and lighter winds. That will allow temperatures to dip to 3 or 4 Celsius in the east of England. A few mist patches first thing here on Saturday morning. But further west, it's a much milder start to the day, because here we've got the winds whipping up. We've got some rain pushing into Northern Ireland and Western Scotland first thing, that reaching Wales, and then eventually the southwest of England later. The rain initially on and off, light and patchy, but it turns heavier and more persistent in the far west by the end of the afternoon. However, the winds, albeit with coastal gales, will be coming up from the south, and so they'll be mild, 13, 14, perhaps 15 Celsius in places. It's dry in the southeast and the far north of Scotland until the evening. That's when the rain pushes through. And for parts of Scotland, the rain, heavy and persistent, could cause some issues with that wet weather coming down on already saturated ground. But by the end of Saturday night, it is turning drier in many places except the southeast, and there'll be a slice of clear spells across central areas as we begin Sunday. Still, though, a lot of cloud remaining, and across East Anglia in the southeast, after a brief respite in the rain, there is more wet weather coming up during the afternoon, some heavy and persistent bursts of rain for London, East Anglia and the southeast. Showers for Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales, and there'll still be a few showers around on Monday, but overall the theme next week is for it to turn drier.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Welcome back, everybody. Lots of you have been getting in touch with your thoughts on the World Cup. John says what we need is England and Wales to go as far as they can in the competition, and it might bring the country out of the recession due to the celebrations in the pubs, restaurants and profits galore. Yes, OK. Jeff says, message to all. Stop the virtue signalling and just play football. He then puts in capital letters, so you know he really means it. Just play football. Loads of you have also been getting in touch, by the way, about various different strikes that have been taking place. A range of views when it comes to the nurses' strike. Apparently they want around a 19% pay rise, which I think, well, Rishi Sunak himself has said is absolutely bonkers. This would mean if they go on strike for those 2 days, the 15th and 20th of December, 30,000 routine operations not going to take place, people on dialysis, people on chemotherapy, apparently in some cases not going to get their treatment. Chris says pay them, and Paul, contributing to our range of views here, says, I never clapped for the nurses during the lockdown. He says instead he clapped for the binman. There you go. Thank you very much, Paul. Yeah, loads of people basically saying that this is ridiculous and that they don't want to have a nurses' strike. And if you don't like the nurses' strike, cop a load of this, because apparently GPs only want their surgeries open 9 to 5 most days of the week. Why is that, you may ask? Well, I'll tell you. It's because apparently if you open longer than that, it discriminates against women, for some reason only women, because men can't have families either. Women who want to have families and can't get home in time to see their kids. Laughable. Absolutely laughable. Anyway, GBviews at gbnews.uk. But due to Qatar's strict alcohol and drug policies, this World Cup tournament will probably be best known for the fans' experience. This is an email, sorry. Yes, I'm just reading that out. I'm basically saying that large groups of young men will be off their heads intent on causing trouble. Well, there we go. Well, we'll have to wait and see about that, don't we? But let's move on. When it comes to filling the gaps in Britain's economy, people agree with Keir Starmer. That's according to our GB News People's poll. Yes, hear me out on this one. When asked who you want to fill the gaps in the economy, 60% of you want the government to prioritise training British workers, while only 9% favour immigration. When voters are asked whether they would support changing Britain's current relationship with the EU to a Swiss-style relationship, which essentially means accepting free movement, going back into the single market, paying into the EU fund and accepting EU laws, i.e., in a nutshell, rejoining the European Union, only 32% of you said that you supported this, 15% are Tories and 13% among Leave voters. And finally, because we absolutely cannot let go of the football theme that's running through this show right now, apparently when it comes to England's footballers taking the knee, 40% of you support it. I don't believe that for a minute. Anyway, we can speak now to polling guru, Sir John Curtis. Sir John, thank you very much. Now, in the wake of the massive, catastrophic net migration figures, the catastrophe that's going on in the Channel when it comes to illegal immigration as well, we now have confirmation the British public wants to prioritise British workers. Why will our politicians not just do what the people want?
Well, the reason, of course, Patrick, why we had very high levels of immigration in the 12 months to the end of June, which were the figures that came out yesterday, were one, a lot of international students who are, of course, not taking jobs, so they're not relevant to this particular polling question. Meanwhile, a lot of the remainder were people being taken in from Ukraine, Afghanistan, and Hong Kong, all for reasons that often evoke quite a lot of sympathy. So we do have to unpack a little bit of what this is about. But I mean, your poll, I think, is not surprising in indicating, particularly because it asked people whether or not we should prioritise high immigration. And I don't think any politician, even many of those on the left, actually want to prioritise high occupation. And of course, the first responsibility of any government has to be to try to advance the prospects and the employment opportunities for those who are already here.
Yes.
And I think, that has to be the case. And I think the public in your poll are very clearly indicating.
So, John, I feel reluctant to do this because I'm a man of your gravitas. But, Sir John, I've got to pick you up on something. You say that no politician really would want huge levels of immigration. Well, we've got it, haven't we? Whether or not they say they want it. I mean, Tony Blair kick-started it. Liz Truss then even said that we needed more legal immigration to go for growth. Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak don't seem too far behind her. There is a difference between maybe what they're saying and what they're actually doing. But in your esteemed opinion as an expert and internationally renowned pollster, would a political party go up in the polls massively if they fixed what was going on in the Channel and they fixed our immigration system as a whole? So if net migration came down, is it as simple as that? Whoosh, it'll be going in the poll.
I think 2 points to make. I mean, sure, there is no doubt that if somebody can find a way of stopping the boats coming across the Channel and avoiding all of the harm and difficulty that's caused by that, both for the migrants and for the resident population, then yes, a government would indeed get a degree of measured support of that, particularly a Conservative government. I'm sure, of course, people also want the immigration system fixed, but it depends a little bit about what you mean by fixed, Patrick. Can I remind you that just over 12 months ago, we had a problem with the delivery of petrol to the petrol stations. There were shortages in some of our supermarkets, and there were a lot of stories about the lack of abattoir workers in order to be able to kill the pigs. So for many people, fixing immigration means, yes, certainly making sure we're not taking in people that we don't
arguably,
need. It also means taking in those people that we do need.
Yeah, well, exactly. A properly, fully functioning, points-based immigration system that suits the needs of British society without bleeding it dry. Sir John, thank you very much. Sir John Curtis there, pollster and Professor of Politics at the University of Strathclyde. And it must be said as well, friend of the channel. Right, you are with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News. Don't go anywhere, though, because up next we're discussing the curious case of Shamima Begum, which sounds like the worst children's book ever written. Should she be allowed to return to the UK? And we will be debating whether workers should be going on strike. Is it selfish, or do workers' rights actually trump, frankly, the rights of everybody else? Where are you when it comes to the idea of a general strike? Oh, and get these emails coming in thick and fast. They are. It's kicked off about the GPs. Apparently, they only want to work 9 to 5. Do you work 9 to 5? GB Views at gbnews.uk. But now, it's the headlines.
Patrick, thank you. It's 5:34. I'm Bethany Elsey here to bring you up to date on GB News. The government is refusing to back down over nurses' pay demands ahead of their first national strike in over a century. Staff in England, Wales and Northern Ireland will walk out for 2 days on the 15th and 20th of December. The Royal College of Nursing accused the government of rejecting formal talks as an alternative to industrial action. But Prime Minister Rishi Sunak says what the union is asking for is simply unaffordable. Meanwhile, teachers in Scotland will strike for a further 16 days next year over a pay dispute. The Educational Institute of Scotland say the consecutive days of action split across every council in the country will happen in January and February. It's after yesterday's strike closed nearly all primary and secondary schools. The government says the bullying investigation involving Deputy Prime Minister Dominic Raab has been expanded. Downing Street confirmed a third formal complaint has now been included. Mr Raab denies any wrongdoing, saying his behaviour is always professional. A government advisor on immigration has warned against proposals to reduce the number of international students coming to the UK, warning it could bankrupt universities. The Prime Minister is considering restricting foreign student admissions to top universities and cracking down on the number of dependents students can bring with them. Downing Street has insisted Rishi Sunak is fully committed to bringing overall immigration levels down. And the World Cup hopes of Wales hang by a thread after their last-minute defeat to Iran. 2-0 was the final score, with both goals conceded late in stoppage time after Wales was reduced to 10 men. They're now bottom of Group B with one game to play against England. And England will play the USA in less than 2 hours' time. They're hoping to secure 3 points and a place in the last 16. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. This is GB News. Don't go anywhere. Patrick will be back in just a moment. But first, here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2102 and 1.1633 euros. The price of gold is £1,449.42 per ounce. And the FTSE 100 closed at 7,486 points.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Welcome back. We are the People's Channel, so it's time to hear from some people. That's right, GB Views at gbnews.uk. Nurses, GPs, yes, OK, are they working hard enough? Is it irresponsible to suggest that they might not be? Samantha says, what would Captain Tom think of these people? These, quotes, heroes that he did all of that walking for. They aren't so caring and self-sacrificing. Grief. If they're prepared for people to die in order to get an unreasonable pay increase, at a time, when the whole country is struggling one way or another. Now, was that Samantha? I think it was Samantha. Samantha, it's strong stuff, but I think in a nutshell there, you are thinking what a lot of people are thinking. If it's a 19%, as we're hearing, a 19% pay increase, that is an absolute whopper on top of potentially all the other public sector pay increases as well. And, hey, if I went on strike, I've said it before, I'll say it again, no one would notice. In fact, maybe the viewing figures will go up. But if I'm a nurse and I went on strike, people might die, and that is a big moral dilemma, isn't it? Paul is on. Paul says, why not offer nurses the same pay as an MP? Yeah, it's a tried and tested line, this, Paul. That would make things much fairer. And unequivocally, if we were designing society again, knocking it down and starting it from the bottom up, we would have a radically different pay structure in society for a variety of different jobs. But we don't live in that world, do we, Paul, unfortunately? Luke says, a condition of employment for anybody who is paid out of the public fund should be that they have a no-strike clause in their contract. It's a tough one, isn't it? Because I am all for, well, people being able to speak their mind. Obviously, I'd be out of a job if we couldn't do that. And I think industrial action, in some cases, it's a barrier against tyranny, isn't it? However, yes, if we're facing down the barrel of a general strike at a time when we need it least, should some be illegal? It's a tough one. It's a tough one. Thank you very much, everyone, for your views. We always cover the big topics here. GB Views at gbnews.uk. Shortly, we're going to be getting into a whopping great big discussion about Shamima Begum. The hearing into whether or not she should return is concluding today. It's probably just about concluded, actually, so we'll be getting the latest on all of that and having that big chat about whether or not we should bring Begum back. Football might be coming home, should she? But Scotland's largest teaching union has announced an additional 16 days of strike action. When will the striking end? In schools across Scotland in a dispute over teachers' pay. Members of the EIS union are taking the industrial action because they object to a sub-inflationary 5% pay rise. Well, let's get some reaction from Conservative MSP Craig Hoy, who is also the party chairman. Thank you very much. Right, OK, Nicola Sturgeon's not banging on about this too much, is she, when she's flag-waving and calling for, you know, freedom and all of this stuff? Why is she ignoring all of this?
No, I mean, this will be a hammer blow to parents and pupils right throughout Scotland, and it yet again shows that the SNP have the wrong priorities. The Scottish Health Secretary, Shirley-Ann Somerville, has known that these negotiations have been going on for months, but because of the SNP's misplaced financial priorities and their misplaced political priorities, they've taken their eye off the ball, and that's why teachers have rejected the latest offer, and that's why there'll now be 16 days of new strike action in the new year, along with strikes here in December. And this is really worrying for Scottish parents and pupils. Yeah, sorry, we are going to have to be a bit short and sweet on this one, Craig, but just educate me a little bit, and dare I say it, potentially many people watching and listening as well. Who is actually responsible in Scotland for teachers' pay? I mean, is it Nicola Sturgeon? Could she give them more money? Absolutely. She needs to make sure that COSLA, the authority that engages in the negotiations with teachers, is adequately funded. But for years and years, for a decade and more, the SNP have hollowed out funding for Scottish councils whilst asking them to do more. So the chickens have come home to roost. Make no mistake, the blame for these strikes that are coming that will cause huge inconvenience lies at the door of Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP government. So in a nutshell, Nicola Sturgeon at the next general election is desperate to make that entire election about a single issue, which is Scottish independence, which would rather conveniently mask the fact that some of her own teachers are going on strike, that the health system is not particularly great, there's the highest drug death in Europe, all of this stuff, and, dare I say, even stifle some debate on whether or not trans men should be in women's prisons, which is taking place in your neck of the woods as well, as far as I can tell. So she is potentially skirting over problems like the one we're seeing right now. Yeah, I mean, she wants to make the next general election a de facto referendum on independence, and that's because she doesn't want to talk about the SNP's appalling record on schools, hospitals, roads, railways, and two ferries that are £150 million over budget and 5 years late. That's the appalling record of Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP in government here in Scotland. That's a whopping great big ferry budget. There we go. MSP Craig Hoy, a Conservative MSP Craig Hoy, I should say. Thank you very much. Also party chairman. Right. Yes, OK. Well, today concludes the 5-day appeal hearing for Shamima Begum. We've been tracking this all week, so it would be a bit weird if we didn't cover it today, wouldn't we? Just in case you've forgotten, Shamima Begum left the UK in 2015, aged 15, to live under so-called Islamic State rule in Syria. This resulted in her citizenship being removed by then Home Secretary Sajid Javid, but her lawyers have argued that that is unlawful, hence we are where we are right now. Joining me to discuss this in the studio is political commentator Matthew Stadler. Matthew, thank you very, very much. Now, you believe that Shamima should be allowed home, don't you?
Well, this is good. I think it's good TV because we clashed on... Well, we didn't clash, we disagreed on Twitter. Yes. And you've invited me on to your show because we have very different views on this. Yes. That is a good thing. I feel very strongly about it. I know you do in the opposite way. The reason I feel strongly about this is because, well, for multiple reasons. First of all, she was a 15-year-old girl. She was a child, right? So she was, in my view, exploited. She wouldn't have been able to get into Syria had she not effectively been trafficked. So she was groomed.
Should 16-year-olds have the vote?
That's another question for another
Well, hang on a minute, because it's only a few months off that.
I personally don't think they should have a vote.
OK, there you go, you're all right then.
I don't
Yes,
think
fair
they
enough.
should.
Go on.
But, OK. Any other questions? Are England going to win against America?
No, because that's relevant, right? Because this is one of the big things, as you know, when people go, well, she was only 15. A lot of those people think that 16-year-olds should have the vote. But anyway.
You can't necessarily predict what I'm going to think, though.
Well,
anyway,
it's
so
wild.
She was a 15-year-old girl. Very soon after arriving in ISIS territory, we believe, she was married off to someone. This, to me, is basically child sexual exploitation. OK, so that's point one.
OK.
We need to be absolutely clear. ISIS is a death cult, or was a death cult. It's a jolly good thing that we smashed them, right? They're evil people. And they were doing evil things, in my view, amongst many others, to Shamima Begum. The second thing is, and this is really important, let's say she was an adult for a second when she went. She wasn't. She was a child. Let's say she was an adult. She's our problem. She was born in Britain. She is British. Imagine if a Syrian criminal came over here and did dreadful things, right? Terrible things in this country. What would we do to that person? Well, I think in the first instance, we'd try them under the rule of law. We'd lock them up if found guilty. And after that, and this is the important point, we would deport them.
OK,
I
get that.
You would agree with me. Deport them back to Syria. So why should Syria handle Shamima Begum?
Well, I bow down to the infinite weight of our own intelligence services when it comes to this. And MI5 and the Home Office and all of these people still view her as a potential threat. So why do you know better than our intelligence services?
I would certainly do not know better than our intelligence services. I'd say two things to that. First of all, there are a lot of threats already in Britain, OK? It doesn't mean we deport people who are here and who didn't go to Syria.
You don't have to invite another one back in if you can help.
But she's British, that's the point.
Well,
she is our responsibility. Why should we foist her over onto Syria? Any more than we shouldn't be able to deport Syrian terrorists from this country. If a Syrian terrorist comes to this country, we send them back. Also, just before coming on air, I wasn't able to listen to it, but on a rival station on the BBC, apparently, just before coming on air, that a former counter-terrorism chief at MI5, possibly MI6, he argued that Sajid Javid's decision to strip her of her citizenship was politically motivated. Now, let's deal with the politics of it. The politics of it, in 2019, shortly after he did that, overwhelmingly, people in this country, according to a poll, disagree with me, they agree with you. 80%, roughly, 8 in 10 Britons thought he was right to do so. Doesn't make it right.
No, I get that, but at the same time as well, he is a politician, right? And we have a court and we have a rule of law, which we're working through now. So, yes, politician behaves like politician, shock horror, but...
We've effectively made her stateless as well. If we're going to talk about the law... Good! We've made her stateless. We say good, but if we make people stateless, we are not abiding by the rule of law. And if we don't abide by the rule of law, society, for all of us, starts to disintegrate.
No, but you see, the thing is, we are... Well, it remains to be seen, but as it currently stands, we are abiding by the rule of law, because she got joint Bangladeshi citizenship, hasn't she? Well,
Bangladesh don't want anything to do with that.
I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised.
By the way, it's important. If she did do terrible things when she was in Syria...
Which she is alleged to have done.
Indeed. And she gave an interview as well, quite recently, after ending up in this camp, in which she said, I think, something along the lines of she saw a head in a bin, something horrific, and she didn't bat an eyelid. Look, I'm not defending what she did as an adult, but she should be held to account in this country.
OK, all right, I do understand that, but then there is a bigger picture, which I think is very concerning, which is that could this now set a legal precedent for other ISIS fighters? Britain, depressingly, had quite a high proportion of British citizens, in terms of relative to other countries, going over to fight, and we've already allowed quite a few of them back. At one stage, we'd allowed more returning ISIS fighters than Saudi Arabia, which is a whopper. If Begum wins this case and she comes back, we open the floodgates potentially for a lot of other people.
Yeah. Listen, Patrick, I've got a family, I've got parents, I've got a child, I've got a wife. I don't want them to be blown up by some evil terrorist, right? Of course I don't. But I also think if we ignore the law, if we try to pretend someone who is British is not British and we foist, as I say, them onto another country, then our whole fabric of the way we do things in Britain starts to fall apart, and it's a very dangerous precedent.
Then, look, we've got nurses' strikes, we've got all of this stuff, we've got taxpayers' money coming out of our ears. Why should the taxpayer pay to have Shamima Begum in prison and then, let's be honest, living in a council house for the rest of her life?
Because she's British. You could say the same. Look, if you want to save money, you could do all sorts of things. You could start executing people. There'd be plenty of people watching GB News today who should execute people. So there'd be plenty of people in our prisons at the moment, at your expense, at my expense, who've done ghastly things, right? Have committed terrorist atrocities or conspired to be terrorists. we could save money by killing them. I don't think we should.
Do you not think it just, very lastly, sorry, do you not think this sends a catastrophically bad message, if you are Shamima Begum, which is one of a total lack of responsibility? Every single 14, 15-year-old in the country will be able to go, oh, look, sorry, I was only a child, didn't know what I was doing. Right through the sliding scale of, oh, sorry, I went to join a jihadi death cult in the Middle East and married a terrorist and had one of his kids also.
My answer to that very briefly is, first of all, if she's done bad stuff in Syria, she should be tried and held to account, OK? That's the first thing. The second thing, imagine the suffering of the person. We're treating her as this evil witch. She was 15 when she went to join an evil death cult, and then since then she's lost 3 children. She's lost 3 of her own children. This woman has suffered an extraordinary amount. Would you like to go and live with ISIS? Would I? Well, absolutely not.
Well, I wouldn't. I mean, I think it's interesting. Look, we fundamentally disagree on this, but it's nice. But it's nice to have. No, you've not. But it is lovely to have the chat, and always a pleasure. All right, look after yourself. Take care. Thank you very much. We'll talk about that all day. What do you make of that, people? GBViews at gbnews.uk. But yes, the end of the show is fast approaching, and let's turn to more strikes. Yes, the main players in. Oh, it was Matthew Stadland, by the way. I didn't give you the outro that you deserve. There you go. Now, let's turn now to the strikes. The main players in the rail dispute met yesterday to try to thrash out their differences ahead of another round of stoppages over Christmas and New Year. The rail dispute is one ripple in a wave of industrial action sweeping the country. Just this afternoon, Scottish teachers, we were hearing that a little earlier, weren't we, have announced further strike dates. But should they be striking at all, is what I'm asking. Joining me now is the former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie. I believe he's joining me right now. There he is. Yes, good stuff, Kelvin. You, like one of the trains. I thought you were late for a second there, but no, alas. Right, should they be allowed to strike? Should we ban, if we're staring down the barrel of a general strike, should we ban strike action for a bit, at least until we're out of an economic mess?
Right, so the answer to that is I cannot for the life of me understand why it is that nurses, and potentially, by the way, doctors are coming down the street as well, are allowed to go on strike. And the reason that they're allowed to go on strike is because nobody in their right mind ever anticipated that they would go on strike. So police officers are not allowed to go on strike. Why nurses? The nurse thing is catastrophic. Yeah. So things like blood tests will not be taking place, right? They will not be taking place. So, you know, if there's some kind of cancer or something, will be put off to a time. When do we know? Well, exactly. It could be your dad. And so my issue really is how extraordinary that we talk about nurses being on strike. How does that happen?
Bonkers.
How does that happen?
But Kelvin, potentially GPs, and I am sick and tired, and have been, of the NHS being perceived as some kind of sacred cow for generations. If it is a sacred cow, it needs to be slaughtered, as far as I'm concerned. It needs to be reborn and reinvented as another type of sacred cow. But nurses and GPs were like a protected species, right? How can they still be? A 19% pay rise is allegedly the demand for nurses. Meanwhile, 30,000 men and women don't go with a routine operation. Chemotherapy, no. Dialysis, no. And now GPs want to work 9 to 5, for goodness sake. I mean, isn't it time we started calling this lot out?
What is emerging in all this, and I half suspect that the GPs particularly, and possibly the consultants as well, would like to now see the collapse of the NHS. It's quite clear it doesn't work. They now don't want to actually see you. I don't know whether you've tried. I mean, I know you have your own medical issues, but we don't like to raise them on the national television. But they don't actually. They want to see the whole thing collapse, don't they? That's the truth about the matter. Right. And because they will make more money, and I would be in favour of going to my GP and paying each time, because I'm sure 2 things would happen. The number of people queuing up at the doctors would be non-existent. And secondly, they would actually treat me like a customer rather than somebody getting in the smooth way of the running of their family life.
Kelvin, thank you very much. You'll be pleased to know that rash has gone away. Kelvin Mackenzie there, the former editor of The Sun, dishing it out. There you are. Right, OK, it's a rapid end to the show because let's finish by heading back over to Doha as England-USA game is just over an hour away. Paul Hawkins in Doha in front of a massive mural of Maradona. Cracking stuff. What's happening?
Yeah, Netherlands currently drawing with Ecuador. There's about 4 minutes left in that match, so it's 1-1 at the moment. Earlier in that same group, Qatar managed to score, but they lost 3-1 to Senegal. Wales went down very late on to Iran, 2-0. The Iranians scoring in stoppage time, in the 9th minute of stoppage time, and then the 11th minute of stoppage time to condemn Wales to almost certain elimination from the group. For Wales to even have a hope of qualifying for the next round, they're going to hope that USA and England, which kicks off in just over an hour's time, they've got to hope those two teams draw, and then Wales beat England when they play on Tuesday. We know that the England team are fully fit for the game that kicks off at 10 o'clock local time, 7 o'clock your time. We'll bring you all the reaction on breakfast tomorrow here on GB News.
Yes, we will, Paul. It's coming home. Thank you very much, mate. Paul Hawkins there, our man in Doha. Right, I've just about got time for Emily Carver, who is covering for Jubes & Co. What's on, Emily?
I'm back this evening again to cover for Jubes. We're going to be asking, has Brexit actually made it more difficult to combat the illegal crossings? That's because Britain has not deported a single Channel migrant to France under its post-Brexit rules. Are GBs right to call for 9 to 5 working days? They say it's patriarchal, the current conditions that they work under. And are police failing to protect women? GB News' own Ellie Costello suffered from stalker. Apparently, the police are failing when it comes to other women who are being stalked. So we're going to be asking all of that. I want all your views from 6 till 7 tonight.
Good stuff. It's always box office. Thank you very much, Emily Carver there. Make sure you tune in because she's coming your way in just a matter of moments. I've been Patrick Christys. Thank you very much. Oh, cheeky little plug. I'm back on tonight. You cannot get rid of me. 8 till 9 p.m. for a short, condensed version of Friday Night Feast. So make sure you tune into that as well. I'll see you in a bit.
Hello, it's Aidan McGibbon here from the Met Office. Next week is looking drier than this week, but for the weekend, we've got another bout of wet and windy weather on the way. It will turn things a bit milder briefly before the drier weather next week turns things colder. For the time being, our weather is coming from the west. Now, we've seen this ridge of high pressure affecting many of us on Friday. That's led to a fine day with a break in between weather systems, but there is still some rain around during the evening, some showers for western areas, some longer spells of rain for the northwest of Scotland. Otherwise, clear spells for many, especially during the first part of the night, and lighter winds. That will allow temperatures to dip to 3 or 4 Celsius in the east of England. A few mist patches first thing here on Saturday morning. But further west, it's a much milder start to the day because here we've got the winds whipping up. We've got some rain pushing into Northern Ireland and Western Scotland first thing, that reaching Wales, and then eventually the southwest of England later. The rain initially on and off, light and patchy, but it turns heavier and more persistent in the far west by the end of the afternoon. However, the winds, albeit with coastal gales, will be coming up from the south, and so they'll be mild, 13, 14, perhaps 15 Celsius in places. It's dry in the southeast and the far north of Scotland until the evening. That's when the rain pushes through. And for parts of Scotland, the rain, heavy and persistent, could cause some issues with that wet weather coming down on already saturated ground. But by the end of Saturday night, it is turning drier in many places except the southeast, and there'll be a slice of clear spells across central areas as we begin Sunday. Still, though, a lot of cloud remaining, and across East Anglia in the southeast, after a brief respite in the rain, there is more wet weather coming up during the afternoon, some heavy and persistent bursts of rain for London, East Anglia and the southeast. Showers for Scotland, Northern Ireland, West Wales, and there'll still be a few showers around on Monday, but overall the theme next week is for it to turn drier.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.